Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's time for Baltimore Comic-Con Live. And man, we've already got a nice lineup of people that are watching us live. Thank you very much. My name's John Suntress. I am the host of the Word Balloon podcast, and we'll be moderating several of these panels over the weekend. We're really glad to have you. We've got an incredible lineup, and we're going to start things off with a great combination of creators that are part of the brand new publisher, AWA, Artists, Writers, and Artisans. This panel is called Creative Inspirations for Winter 2020, and these are familiar names, but they are creators that are putting out some brand new books for the winter period for AWA. So let's get things started. First of all, I want to welcome Dalibor Talajic. See, I screwed it up anyway. I apologize, bud. I tried for it.
Talajic. My last name's been screwed up so many times, I even forgot myself my last name. So we'll go with Talajic.
Well, it's good to see you, man. Next, an old friend. It's a pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's welcome Cullen Bunn to the conversation. Good to see you, Cullen.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Excellent. Doing all right. And let's see here. We got the great Ethan Sachs. How's it going,
You just have the regular Ethan Sachs. Sorry.
And Nelson Blake the second. Got to include that Roman numeral, man, to make everything legit. NB2 for you, Chad. Here we go. I'll get him. There he is. How are you, man? Is he there? Nope, not yet.
Okay.
Now he's there. There we go.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm doing fantastic, man. I found out a long time ago if I don't put the 2, my dad gets my mail. So that literally happened. And I started I didn't put the 2 for years, and then he called me. He was like, "Hey, did you order something?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, we got to fix this then."
Well, that can be embarrassing depending on what you order. Absolutely, man. All right, now from the Great White North, one of my favorite artist writers out there, and a fine filmmaker as well, Kari Andrews. Good to see you, Kari.
Hey, nice to be here, guys.
Absolutely, man. Seriously, Axel and Jemis, they cherry-picked a lot of great creators. And finally, I want to welcome, and he's kind of going to be the point man in general talking about the AWA line. It's Mike Costa, everybody. Nice to see you, Mike.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here.
Fantastic, man. So, Mike, tell me about these group of books and launching them now. Is it just a matter of schedule in terms of getting them ready? Or, what was the thinking in terms of these guys debuting right now?
Sure. So we just started about 2 years ago, just started collecting talent and getting things off the ground. We had our first launches back in March. Baltimore actually had a book in that launch called Hotel that's out in trade form now. Everyone should check out right in time for Halloween. And we launched the week, basically everything shut down. So if everyone remembers that week when, the NBA shut down and schools started to shut down and the country just all of a sudden went from this is going to be okay to we're in lockdown now. We launched right in the middle of that week. So despite that, audiences found the books and we published the first issues of them online, and we kept creating. We didn't kind of shut our doors. A few things had to go on pause, but we were still able to have a few projects in the hopper, finish those up, and start looking at the landscape. I believe, with the exception of Ethan, everyone on this call had sort of already had their wheels turning on their projects that they're working on now at that point.
Okay.
Where Ethan comes in is, again, the country shut down. We're sort of looking at this COVID crisis, and Axel and some other people in the company started talking about how can we look at this and how can we maybe do some good in this time. And the thought we turned to was journalism, was kind of covering these sort of everyday heroes who are keeping the country going, who are combating this on the front lines. So we sort of came up with a concept, and we looked at who could write this, who could be a part of this, who has experience in comic books, has experience as a journalist and has contacts with people that he can feature. And when you start putting that Venn diagram together, the name Ethan Sachs becomes one of the only names that you can go to. And Ethan did a wonderful job with it, and we were able to publish digitally with NBC News these COVID Chronicle stories, and now that's being collected into a trade that'll be out in December.
That's excellent. Ethan, it's funny, just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to, and now I'm suddenly forgetting, but I remember when Marvel did The Call and that other book like that right in the period of 9/11, and those were first responder books and very timely for the moment. So yeah, I mean, again, based on your journalism skills and your writing and stuff, yeah, tell us about coming up with COVID Chronicles.
Well, first of all, Axel Alonso called me, and this was very much his idea. He paired me with an incredible artist in Dalibor, who just, you could, when he drew these people, in the some of the darkest moments of their life, you could feel the pain etched on their faces or the fear. But basically, it wasn't that challenging to find people. We looked literally across the world, and there are several billion possible stories, since this was a pandemic that affects just about everybody.
Certainly.
So we were lucky that these people shared so much time, just hours and hours of interviews and personal photos that we used as photo references. So
wow, Dalibor, again, I'm so glad that you're involved with this, because your style of art really does bring a sense of realism to a project like this. And yeah, I mean, God, as Ethan just said, to kind of convey not only their stories but the emotion behind these stories as well, that's a big task.
It's slippery terrain, because it's real people, it's real time, and you don't want to insult anybody. You don't want to exploit, in a bad sense, other people's misfortune. So my approach to this was to, well, let's say underplay, just to make it as naturalistic as possible, but make it convincing, make it it's horrible to say regarding the subject, but make it attractive, so people could emotionally relate.
No, I understand. Was there a tough story, both of you, that, I mean, again, you're kind of living these people's own, experiences in the storytelling and everything. And God, I, as a news journalist myself, was very busy on 9/11, and again, I can relate from that standpoint, and first responders having to do what they had to do. And it was a tough couple of days and stuff. And I would imagine you guys living with these stories must have been tough as well, Ethan.
Some of them were tough. There was one in particular, someone I knew tangentially who had COVID and barely survived, a single mom in Brooklyn. And she sent us this video message, which I didn't share with the team, but I used it, I used the still, and I definitely used it in the piece. That was basically a goodbye to her son.
Wow.
Yeah, her 4 or 5 years old. I think it's 4. And, the message, she wasn't sure. She's very religious, and she talked about, the God and Jesus. And so I think she was not necessarily afraid to die, but she was afraid to leave him. And it was a very moving video. So it was very difficult to and there is a lot of trust that goes with sending that, to me. So I don't take that for granted.
Yeah, Dalibor, were there specific stories that were really kind of tough to draw?
Yeah, I should point out this same story that Ethan mentioned, because being a parent myself, in the story, this mother sends the child away from herself in fear not to transfer this disease. So that's really a hard moment. And there was another story about an Italian opera singer that was very important to me because I kind of grew up in the opera because my mother was an opera singer.
Wow.
So this is like the music, the power of music. At the first, you would say this is something ridiculous. This is something that's not required. That's not needed. But art, any art form, is what talks to our spirits, talks to our souls, and this is what keeps us going. So this ridiculous action, that guy is standing on a balcony and singing his heart out. It was really important to me.
Understood. Is the series wrapped up? You said the trade is coming out. Has the series wrapped up?
Yes.
For the moment, it has.
Okay. And then you're going to see about possibly a volume 2 or whatever?
Well, I mean, hopefully the world gets back to normal before that thought even crosses our mind. But there's a lot of stories to tell from this past year.
Certainly.
For sure.
Well, transitioning to Kari's book, because really, Mike, the AWA line, Upshot. Excuse me, Upshot. Upshot really started with an ironic, pandemic.
Well, yeah, that's a great point. One of the featured book, J. Michael Straczynski and Mike Deodato's The Resistance, that sort of kicks off this shared universe. The central moment in it is a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's of a different nature, but the fact that we launched with this book into a pandemic was certainly not something that was intended, but proved to be very prescient on Straczynski's part, having written the script long before. And I remember when Axel sort of first started talking about bringing Straczynski on, and their first conversations that they had, they were looking at, what are the fears now? Like, what are the giant obstacles that we have to contend with now, with nuclear war being a previous generation's sort of impetus for comic book universes. And now it's, this threat of disease, and he saw that a year in advance. But anyway, the universe launches with a pandemic that leaves a certain of the population with superpowers, almost completely at random, very young, and that's where Kari's story kind of picks up, with someone who survived having this disease and now has superpowers. But because society kind of doesn't accept those superpowers, or they're viewed as dangerous, or they're viewed as illegal, he sort of has to hide them while also trying to contend with the normal pressures and difficulties that a high schooler would have at that age.
Yeah, tell us about it, Kari. Erratic? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, erratic.
All right. Yeah, you don't have to emphasize the erratic. Okay.
You can. There's no harm, no foul. Yeah, he's like kind of a, he's a teenage superhero archetype. And I thought, Axel presented me with the concept of the world and asked me if I had any contributions. And I thought, well, that's an archetype that needs to be there, whatever that is. And I just kind of threw that into the ether, and erratic just kind of came back at me. And I'm very excited to create a new superhero with a tail, and I haven't seen one in a long time. So that's my shining moment right there. Erratic's tail.
When you say tail, I'm assuming story, not actually.
No, it's a tail.
It is a tail.
It
is a tail. All right, I haven't seen it yet.
It's part of his costume, but
Okay.
It's kind of like a grounding wire. So he basically has the world's, it's like as if his superpowers were like the world's crappiest cell phone battery. They last for 10 minutes. He can do amazing ultimate adventures, and then it's dead, and he has to wait 24 hours to build back up those powers. He's basically like a human capacitor, like a storm cloud. He's got to build up the energy before he can explode it. And I thought that would be pretty fun to I could only imagine the situations of like 10-minute power cycle, like what, trying to save the world in 10 minutes at 15 years old. I kind of came up with the costume, the tail, the tagline, the logo, kind of all in one go. and I just kind of drew a cover and gave it to Axel, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So that's kind of the origin story there.
That's outstanding, man. First story arc, 5 issues.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. And when does it debut? Does it debut in December? Does it, when?
I think so. I don't know.
December 2nd.
Yes. Hey, my birthday. Fantastic. That'll be a nice birthday present. I remember that.
Pay for yours. I'm not. Come on.
Sorry, you got to come back on my birthday, and we'll talk about it.
Let's do it,
absolutely.
man. Let's do it.
That'll be that'll be terrific. So yeah, this is the first superhero in this new universe.
It was what was hard about this one was to kind of mash up this real world pandemic creation superhero universe with kind of an archetypal teenage superhero. So that was kind of a bit of a challenge to try to figure out how to mesh those two in a way that felt appropriate, but this is before COVID, but appropriate, but real, but kind of fun. Like it's a fun book, but still like a lot of teens are just full of angst, walking angst machines. So the best thing about Peter Parker is how horrible his life is. So I want to, I'm always looking to make characters' lives horrible, and when it's a teenager, it's real easy and real fun.
Well, and also beyond the problems of this universe with the pandemic they're facing and the catalyst for his powers and stuff, do you look now, because you've had your experiences with Spider-Man and other teen heroes of the Marvel universe, is this a new opportunity to say something else with teens that you haven't had the opportunity to say before?
Well, the funny thing is, I have kids, and I'll say a new component to this hero, which you haven't quite seen before. This is a teen archetype character, so you've kind of probably seen that kind of a person before. We love that kind of a person. He's an archetype. But I've never actually seen a representation of the modern school system. I stumbled across the Pink Floyd video, Another Brick in the Wall, just last week. And, it's kind of this archetypal headmaster, and he's rapping the knuckles of this poor young boy because he's daring to write poetry when he should be succeeding and achieving. And he's pumped through this machine of students, and they come out of desks and they go into hamburger meat. And now all I can think of was like, well, this didn't age well. This is a quaint idea that a young boy is not allowed to write poetry. Whap! It's like in today's school system, it's almost you're not allowed not to write poetry. You're not allowed to succeed, and you're not allowed to achieve, and you don't grade anything. You don't keep score. It's like a bit it's a different world. So I just have kids in that system, so it's just a fun. I'm poking fun at modern school a little bit too. So that's kind of a fun thing. But again, with the framework of like, because teens don't change, whether the school system changes or not, whatever. But teens are always the same, and it's a hard that transition to boyhood to manhood is like why we all love those teen stories is because we've all been there, or we're going to be there, or defines us. Like in many ways, that like getting awarded powers when you're a teenager is almost like getting awarded your manhood. Like what do you do with that, with those abilities, and how do you harness your potential to have a good life for you and your family and your friends, and how do you that journey is one that I think is always interesting.
How secret is his identity going to be?
Oh, totally secret. The good thing is, like, in this world, it better be secret, or there'll be consequences. So I always like characters where if they were to be discovered, there would be consequences. So my favorite version of a Superman is, desperately trying to pretend he's Clark Kent. It doesn't make sense in that character doesn't make sense in any world in DC Comics. I don't think that weird, even Peter Parker, like in the movies, his mask is off all the time. Like it's kind of a throwback to try to keep that. But in this world, there are real consequences. He's got a single mom. He's got like a brother. Like, they don't know he's got powers. Like if the government were to find out he had these powers, there would be, things would happen. So it's been fun to it was always fun to hide your identity, save the world. You've got 10 minutes to do both. It's that kind of a situation.
Well, and exactly what you described at DC and Marvel right now, it's been interesting that the comics are starting to reflect the movies, where it's like, yeah, secret identity is their old hat. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think it's interesting. Yeah. That's why I asked the question. So that's
to be honest, in many ways, I think it's a deviation of the archetype of superpowers. In I think the archetypal function of a superhero is to have these abilities, to do these things, but to keep them sheathed and keep people safe. Only use them when you need them. Don't, it's not you saving the world, it's your alter ego. And in many days, the modern world is like, no, it's you. Get on Twitter, get on Facebook, you're the hero. And it's like, I think that's what's fracturing society. So I wouldn't mind so much if we retreated back to our secret entities and kept our exploits more modest.
I agree. A little anonymity.
Celebrity culture, I think, would help the world a little bit today.
I totally agree with that. Yet here I am, a YouTuber, saying all this. So maybe
I'm here too,
I'm not
right?
practicing what I preach. I don't know.
Too, so
I should be Captain Obvious instead. Maybe that would be better.
hypocrites, John.
Hey, let's talk about Bite Size now and Cullen and Nelson. So yeah, tell me about coming up with this book. I'll start with Cullen. I always start with the writer. Forgive me, Nelson, but go ahead.
Yeah, so Bite Size is an all ages series. It's a story about a group of 6 highly advanced robots that escape from their government lab and end up in this suburban family's home on Christmas Eve. And hijinks ensue from there. It's definitely a fun comic. It's a story that I wanted adults can read it for sure, but I wanted kids to be able to read it and get a real kick out of it, and hopefully turn them on to comics a little bit too.
Nelson, when I hear a description like that, my new favorite word that I've learned in the last couple of years regarding superheroes and merchandising, and that's the word toyetic. And I would imagine from that description and putting it in your hands that maybe that's one of the things in mind when you're designing these characters.
It's funny. So I started out doing toys. One of my first gigs when I was in my early 20s was drawing G.I. Joe, the actual toy boxes and the concept.
Wow. Yeah.
So I have some experience in that area, but what I really thought about, which kind of goes with being toyetic, was really if these things had to be animated in 3D, so this was a big departure for me artistically. Normally I'm doing Marvel, superhero, DC type stuff, you know what I mean? Or genre sci-fi. While it is sci-fi, this is kid sci-fi. This is true animation style, like cartooning. And so for me, going back to my very first job was in animation, doing web series and stuff. And everything had to turn, and all of the shapes had to be recognizable by their silhouette. And that's what makes them toyetic, right? It's like, even I remember being a kid going to buy Transformers and stuff like that and Hot Wheels and whatever and Micro Machines. And you can see that toy literally from like a mile away, right? If your friend had that in the yard, you're like, you got the new, fill-in toy here. And that comes from that thinking of having the silhouettes speak to the character and to the idea. And so each of these robots and each of these kids and family members and even the dog, they all have their own personality and identity. So when designing those things, that's what I really tried to bring across. And I think that does lend to the toyerism of the property.
Sure. Are you using a different set of materials to, kind of convey that 3-dimensional idea that you're trying to do?
Just working digitally, although I will say it's a bit of a cheat code having Snakebite, our colorist, and Raza, our cover artist. When you guys see these covers, it's going to look like he 3D generated those covers. But the crazy thing is that they're very close to the drawings, especially like the robots. It's literally the same thing, but he makes it look like they actually sent this to a studio and 3D generated it. Yeah. So while I didn't have to use any tools, I just got to draw a bunch of cartoons. Those guys did the heavy lifting in terms of, taking care of that part of it.
Okay. And also you can't help but think of the Metal Men. And I don't know how much that might be an inspiration for this, Cullen or Nelson, but, based on the description, I've they've always been one of my favorite group of robots.
Well, you don't grow up in the era I grew up in without a healthy love of robots, because you've got everything from R2D2 to Jason and Star Command, and those robots in Jason and Star Command were amazing. They were just little wonders, but I wanted that robot to be my friend, and And then you get into movies like Batteries Not Included and Short Circuit.
Short Circuit, sure.
We really wanted these robots, like I just said, we wanted them. These are the robots you want as your buddies. You want, if I were a kid, I would want these robots in my backpack as I go on adventures, wherever that may be. And they're not, the Metal Men, that's an interesting comparison because I think they're probably very different from that because these are not humanoid robots in the least. But when you see what Nelson has put together for these characters, and I mean, we talked a lot about what they would look like, and we really went back and forth. But the way each of these robots is very different. Each one has its own visual personality, but they're adorable. Even the mean ones.
Yeah, that was the idea. Is I wanted them all to be appealing, even if and this is not a spoiler, but even if one of them was going to open up and a buzzsaw was going to come out of its face, I want that to be a cute face before that happens, so that you wanted that toy because kids want both. They want, because when I was a kid, I mean, I was into cool stuff, but if something was overly industrialized, when I was very young, it would turn me off. I needed that. It's emotional anthropomorphism, not visual anthropomorphism. So the idea that you could identify with it, and we talked about some of these things like Johnny Five. I think Wally's a great example. They have some qualities that allow us to relate to them, but they don't look like people at all. So that's kind of the wheelhouse that we're operating in.
Okay, I can see that. I want to ask everybody, and well, Mike, I was going to ask about again timing because unlike the first wave of the AWA books, where it was the crime books and the supernatural books and stuff, now we're really getting kind of a potpourri. Moving forward, is that the idea that we will kind of see various genres all kind of debuting at the same time?
Yeah, we'll have a mix going forward. Again, it's sort of our first teen books, our first all ages books. The fact that they're coming out at the same time isn't necessarily part of a big brand strategy, but it did time out in a way that we're happy with. You'll still see books that are like our debut launches in subsequent months. We're still doing that genre, that sort of crime horror, along with sort of more traditional superhero stuff a little more as well. To answer your question, yes, we've always planned to sort of feature all genres, and the fact that we're sort of bringing these out at the same time, we're happy with.
I want to go around the horn and ask why AWA for all of you. And Ethan, I'll start with you. What appealed? What's the difference? Is there a difference working in this capacity than the big two?
Well, first of all, Axel called me, and Axel is the guy who actually brought me into comic books in the first place. When he was at Marvel, led to my first big series with Old Man Hawkeye. So he literally could have called me and said, "I need dry cleaning," and I would have been there. But that being said, I just love the breadth of talent and variety that AWA and Upshot in particular are bringing. It's just they're giving a lot of freedom and just a vote of confidence in people to do different things that you don't always see on the shelves at comic stores. So, I mean, I'm a fan. I buy, every time I go to the comic store, I buy something else, whether it's, one of the first trades that came out recently or some just
That's
as a
cool.
fan.
And I imagine all of you were likely recruited by Axel. Hey man, I always say great editors are great tastemakers because they're the first eyes on you guys and what you're proposing. And, Axel's had a lot of hits that he's overseen over the years. And I really do appreciate his critical eye when it comes to putting books together and stuff. So Dalibor, beyond maybe Axel calling you and asking you to come in, what are you liking about AWA right now?
Well, yes, of course. Axel call? But there's a backstory about Axel. Even before I was a professional artist, I was a friend with late Edwin Biukovic, who was at the time working on Human Target for Vertigo, edited by Axel. So I was a young, aspiring hothead, and I already, I felt like I knew the man through the stories told by Eddie. So when I finally got to work with him, it was like unbelievable for me. He discovered me, actually. He hired me first. And when he called again from AWA, it was like, nothing to think about. And then when we had a video call, and he told me what AWA was about, and the level of both freedom within the genres that AWA allowed, and the sense of fun that came from behind this presentation, is it was like I was hooked. No question about it.
That's excellent. I'm so glad you guys are mentioning past books, and certainly no disrespect to what you're doing currently with AWA. But I do want to, and given that these are new books, some of the audience might have questions of Old Man Hawkeye or Human Target or some of the other books that Cullen and Ethan and Kari have worked on, and Nelson. So please, everybody, it's a jump ball as far as all of you watching right now. And you're more than welcome. I love that the chat is really kind of in its own world right now, talking to each other too. That's terrific. So really glad to seeing all that. Cullen, what attracted you to AWA?
Yeah, look, I get excited about exciting companies and companies that are doing something different and new and are open to taking on, these different kinds of projects. And it's great, it's great to get on the ground floor of this kind of thing. I love creator-owned books, obviously. And yeah, I mean, despite the, regardless of the Axel of it all, of him, calling and inviting me in and being in a big part of me being able to do what I love for a living. I mean, you got to keep in mind, this is a guy who had us doing Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. Speaking of older books, which was not a kid-friendly book at all, but was willing to look at me doing a kid-friendly book for this project, and I think that's that's exciting. That spinner rack's just full of junk right now. I mean, not junk quality wise; it's all wonderful comics, but it's just stuff I'm sorting through my comic book closet, and it's just the extras that are sticking out there. Eventually, I'm going to put all my books out there.
Is that a Jim Demonakis spinner rack? I gotta ask.
This is an old spinner rack I got off of Craigslist, like 20.
Oh, great.
Yeah, or not 20, but 10, 15. I mean, it's an old rack that I got. It's an original.
Does it squeak? Yeah, I was gonna say, does it squeak when it turns? It's got to.
It screeches. It doesn't squeak.
That's outstanding. Before I ask Kari and Nelson, Ed has a good point where he says, I believe Axel has described the first AWA Opshot wave as genre mashing. Do these books also mash genres? And that's...
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. I mean, as Kari kind of touched on with Erratic, it is sort of this teen superhero story, but it is also very much a high school story. It really is that sort of two genres put together to make something even better. And then with Bite Size, it's a sci-fi book. It's an all ages book. It's a fun book about a family. It's one kind of cultural touchstone we haven't talked about yet is like Gremlins. I read it, it kind of reminds me of Gremlins. I think our letterer, Sal Cipriano, brought up a similar comparison. And by the way, I don't know if Colin Nelson, if I've told you this, but he is always very excited to get the new issues to letter because his son is such a huge fan of the book.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Like, when's the next issue coming? Because I'm so excited to read it.
That's the best kind of advanced review I could hope for. That's awesome.
That sounds great, man. And yeah, Nelson, again, I mean, this is tapping, as you said, into your toy past in a lot of ways. But is there any other opportunities you're seeing from AWA working with them?
Oh, 100%. So the thing about it with this project, obviously, like Axel showed up like Nick Fury and said you have a mission and all that stuff, right? So same story. He also helped bring me into Marvel. But the thing with this project in particular, there were actually a lot of things. Like I said, I have a background in toys and stuff, but like Cullen alluded to, and Mike as well, the touching on Gremlins and batteries not included and Big Hero 6 and stuff like that. These are things that I genuinely love and loved coming up. And I remember the day literally that I decided to be a comic book artist was I was reading an issue of X-Men by Jim Lee. So I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I was reading it so intently, I almost got hit by a car. And I realized I like this so much that I need to do this. I can't do that again. That was silly. But this is what I need to do. And the thing that always struck me was I always wanted to make comics for me as a kid, because like a lot of kids, that's what I got into as, for reading and stuff. That's what kind of got me addicted to it. Before I even got into the older stuff like Wolverine, I used to read Freddy Krueger comics and stuff like that. I read Archie, I love that. And even as I started to get older, I read certain manga comics that still had that tone. So the opportunity to work on a book for that audience, I really, really wanted it, which you couldn't really tell from my previous history of drawing, ladies on motorcycles with katana blades fighting ninjas. You don't see that, that element of it. Yeah. But that was always really strong for me. And the idea that Cullen and Axel and Mike and the rest of the crew at AWA would trust me to do a book that was so outside of my known body of work was, I couldn't say no to that.
Gotcha. And Kari, what do you think? I mean, again, you're a longtime collaborator with Axel, and I'm not surprised that he tapped you to come in the fold. But and obviously with Erratic and everything, there's a chance to do lighter stuff. But yeah, what appealed about AWA to you?
Well, when I first started at Marvel was the year that Axel first started at Marvel, I believe, and we both started working together pretty quick. And, I was doing Hulk covers with Axel back then and Spider-Man covers. And we kind of started this journey together. And he's always been one of my favorite editors. And when he became editor-in-chief of Marvel, I was happy for him, but it was a little sad for me because I no longer was working with him in that capacity. So when he left Marvel, I was just like texted him immediately. He's like, whatever you need, let me know. Let's do it. And I think today's world is so divisive. And everyone's so ready to just like destroy each other. Like you have to, pick your battles and stand by your friends. And, it wouldn't have mattered if Axel worked at Playmobil. I would have jumped on board, like that's more important because I know that I'm a weirdo. Like I approach projects in a off way. I kind of zig when others are zagging. And I do better work when I have the right kind of support. And the kind of support that Axel can give me where it's like, there's a lot of trust there and I do, experimental things and he's into it. So, even with Erratic, I'm doing some weird things with the backgrounds. I'm doing like kind of the art. I'm always trying new things. So I just knew it was like, it's a good environment. It's good. I love Axel, good company, whatever he's doing, I knew was going to be cool. And I'm still working with Marvel, still working with DC. I'm kind of like approaching, I used to call myself, I used to say, here's the mistake. I think we talked about this before. I used to say I worked for Marvel Comics, and I had this revelation a few years ago that that's not true at all. I'm a freelance artist. I work for myself. I work with Marvel Comics, but there was a real hard line when it's like when you realize that some truth about the world that it was like, I work for myself and I love Marvel. I love the people there, but those people change. One thing you learn when you are a freelance artist is you will always outlast your editors. So from when I started Marvel, I think there's only one editor that's been there that's left. Now that's Tom Brevoort, who's been there the whole time. So, you find your partnerships, you stick with them, you stick by your friends, you do good work, you find the right environment to like challenge things and experiment and, create new opportunities for yourself. And if they work out, that expands to the people you love, and that expands to everyone. So, that's kind of, that's a long way of saying I just followed Axel.
I understand. There's a question for you here, Kari, from Adam Anderson. Your covers for Year Zero were amazing. When you saw them at the local comic shop, they stood out and if you didn't buy them, you knew you were missing out. What inspired those covers?
That was Axel had a vision for the covers, which was a mixture of international covers that were kind of beauty shots, but were a bit absurd and a bit like something was off about them. So he had some ideas. I had some ideas. We jammed them out. And one of the things that was interesting about those covers was just the art style. I approached them more like a movie concept style, where I was integrating and painting with a lot of elements, painted and photographed and 3D and whatever, like jamming it together as if it was like a concept art for a movie. Whereas, some of the most recent DC covers I've done are like on airbrush and paint on paper. So I love it was really fun because it's both a unique look for the book, but also it gives me an outlet for my digital skills that maybe I wouldn't want to do on like Batman or whatever, but it was that weird juxtaposition of absurd and like a postcard image from some international traveler or something like that.
Interesting. Wow. Adam has another question, and Mike, I'll ask you this. Will the second volume of Resistance in Year Zero continue with the same characters or provide different perspectives?
So with Year Zero, that's coming out in less than 2 weeks, the second volume. You'll be able to see another fantastic Kari cover at your local comic shop very soon. That will be November 4th that's coming out.
Yeah, that's great.
That does follow new characters. So you will get some new perspectives. For anyone who's read the first volume, it follows various sets of characters in this zombie world. The second volume follows kind of new sets of characters later on down the line in different parts of the world. So it'll be sort of more tales from this same world. With the Resistance, I'm going to keep that under my hat a little bit for now. I'm going to use my editorial privilege to not reveal too much, but I think if you're a fan of the first series, you will enjoy this one. What I've read and what I've seen so far.
That sounds great. Here, Dex Baker makes a great point. I'm interested in hopping into this universe. It'll be like rediscovering comics all over again. Yeah, man, that honestly, I felt that way with the first wave of the books and everything. And especially, I'm a massive crime comic fan. I knew I was in good hands with Axel and the people he chose with the crime comics. And it's just great to read quality stuff where there are no, continuity barriers or weight to hold a story back, where as tough as things are going to get, even for somebody like Christopher Chance, Delbert, I mean, they'd still probably want him around. He's probably going to get out of it some way or another. And that's truly what I love. And so, Dex, I agree with you, man. No, I think this is a great time to jump in. And as you can tell from this group of people, AWA has a great line of creators. They know what they're doing. And, starting with Joe Straczynski, right on down to everybody that's here right now. So I love it. And again, I've been very, very impressed. And I should say, too, Sunday, during the Comics for Kids period, we're going to have a Magnetic Press panel as well. We will be talking more about the kids line from AWA. So that's cool. I should acknowledge everyone is making references to the American Wrestling Association, the old AWA. But guys, that's like, hey, boy, I mean, people are asking if you guys are wrestling fans. I guess I'll throw it out there. But it's kind of like, the World Wildlife reclaiming the WWE. It's like, not necessarily congruent, kids, but thanks for playing. You know what I mean?
They were almost guaranteed not fans. It's at one look with Jake the Snake, and it was absolutely not. We're not on the same page here.
When I was a kid, I have a stinging memory of watching. I got to watch Andre the Giant fight Hacksaw Jim Duggan in person in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Nice.
In the little hockey arena there. It blew my mind. It was amazing.
Look,
I hear you, man.
If you guys want to talk about old wrestling, we're going to need a couple more hours from because it's too big a part of my life growing up. So we'll leave it at that.
I understand, man. That's hilarious. Coming from Chicago, we were a big territory, so I certainly had my 70s memories of Moose Cholak and Bobo Brazil and Jimmy Superfly Snuka and the like. So I understand. See, we all got our wrestling cred, kids. We weren't going to let you down. Don't worry about it. Well, in closing, guys, I'm happy to go around the horn. Anything you guys want to promote as far as, what to look for? I mean, again, all these books are debuting in the weeks and months ahead. Kari, I was going to ask what's happening directing wise. I love that part of your freelance career as well, that you're a horror movie guy as much as you are a comic book guy.
It's a weird life I have. So I did a movie called Sniper Assassin's End, which is actually Sniper 8, amazingly enough.
Outstanding.
That came out in June and it reached the #1 in iTunes, in Apple iTunes. So
hey, that's awesome, man.
That's my latest film and directing endeavor. And then, right now I'm writing a new script, and I had a series I was supposed to be directing now that went away because of COVID, but whatever. It's my secret identity, the comics and the directing. So I'm pretty much focused on comics right now, but there were always I'll let you know when the next thing comes up, and we can
please do, man. Because honestly, I always love talking about filmmaking as much as I do comic book making.
I know you're a huge movie fan, as am I. So it's what a crossover, right? Here's superhero comic books. Every superhero comic book fan is probably a wrestling fan and probably a movie fan, and it's like that weird wrestling, movies, comics, toys. It's actually a square. Animation. What is 5? A pentagram?
Pentagram.
Oh God.
Pentagram.
Hilarious. Ben, is it Ben Uncles or Ben Unk? Yeah, Ben Uncles. AWA is making some of my favorite books on the stands right now. Having a global pandemic during your nascent days can't have been easy, but you guys are killing it. Yeah, man. Like I said, Axel and Jemis and company. Again, they've assembled a hell of a team of people, and I think it's pretty amazing the stuff that you guys have been putting out. And I congratulate all of you.
The cool thing. Let me tell you the cool thing before we wrap up is
we got time.
Marvel and DC Comics have taken over pop culture in a way that I haven't seen since action movies in the 80s. And it's cool. It's amazing. And it's really cool. On the flip side, if you try to Google Captain America, you'll get 3 pages of Chris Evans before you get one single image of a Jack Kirby Captain America.
It's
right. Kind of like, I think AWA is a great opportunity for comic books to do comic books, to sell comic books, to be comic books, to make comic books, to read comic books. It's not trying so hard to be a movie. If that happens, great. I'm sure everyone would like that to happen, but there's a thing a weird circular thing. And remember what happened to Batman in the 60s after the TV show became successful? It started corrupting the book Batman.
The comics, absolutely, man. Yeah, poor representation.
To write the ship, right? And I feel like in some other companies that's happened a little bit. And that's right. As of now, this company's uncorrupted by the touch of success from Hollywood. So I think it's a very pure reading experience with some very high concept book by high caliber people, perhaps myself excluded.
I understand, and I agree with that. Daymares, color it. Any more plans for Missouri Swagger? And how does it feel to be second fiddle on your own podcast?
Listen here, Daymares. I don't know who you are, pal, but we're going to have an AWA old school wrestling match right now. No, Missouri Swagger, I hope so. I was actually just sitting here because I saw someone comment about Dennis Hopeless, who is Dennis Hopeless and Kyle Strom do Missouri Swagger with me. And yes, I am second fiddle in my podcast, The Bungalow, because my co-host is my wife, and I will always be second fiddle. My wife.
That's outstanding. Missouri Swagger, talk a little bit about it, Colin.
It just started out with my arch enemy Dennis Hopeless and I decided we needed to talk about comics and life, and we started doing it on a YouTube channel, and we brought in Kyle Strom, talented artist, to also. It's just basically us sitting around talking. Sometimes it gets a little too loose, like there's no format whatsoever. But we're on a little bit of a hiatus, but I kind of would like to bring it back for sure.
Hey man, that's great. I am always happy when more creators are podcasting or vlogging or whatever, man. So that's outstanding to hear. Very much so. Let me see what else is going on in the chat. Marvel Arrow is an amazing comic. Is anyone responsible for Marvel Arrow right now in this group? or is that a random? It's a random tangent. Well, thank you very much, there, Ricky. We appreciate
Good
it.
to know, though. I'm excited to look whatever that is. I know the Arrow Bar with Halloween coming up. I'm very excited about jumping into that.
I like that. That's fantastic. Guys, seriously, I really appreciate you coming on. And once again, Mike or creators, tell us when these books are going to be dropping, and we can start looking for them on the stands and online.
Sure. So for Erratic and the trade version of COVID Chronicles, that'll be out December 2nd. With COVID Chronicles, if you go to the NBC News website, they have a hub page for it. It's called COVID Chronicles. If you Google NBC News, COVID Chronicles, it'll pop right up. So you can check those out now, but the trade will be out in December. And then a week later, Bite Size #1 will be out December 9th. And the general AWA plugs, I guess, is that the trades are out now. We have several great ongoing series out now. So if you haven't jumped in yet, there's plenty of opportunity to. And just, Kari, I appreciate what you said about the company. That's sort of exactly what we're going for, telling a good story first. And in comics, that means, it's the marriage between script, art, colors, letters, and the cover. All of those things tying together to give the reader an experience.
You know what it is? It's the high level athlete before he gets rich. It's still that sweet spot of like, these are just good comics. Read them and enjoy them. Like, you want in now, because if you try to jump in 8 years from now, who knows?
I want to throw in Jordan's question here, and Mike, I'll ask you to answer. Compare AWA to Image, I suppose, from a business standpoint as much as a creative standpoint?
From a business standpoint, it's a little bit different. I mean, Image is very much 100% creator owned with just some sort of back end services to help with publishing. Whereas we're a little more of a traditional publishing house, but we also incentivize creators in a different way.
Understood. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I started at Image with Top Cow, working next to Mark Silvestri for several years.
Yeah.
And it's a very different thing because over at Image, you have the sections where creators come in and say, we want to do books. And then you've got the schools of like Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee, how they had Wildstorm and Top Cow coming out of Marvel and, doing really ongoing series almost all the time and stuff like that. A lot of stuff at AWA is just a bunch of creators getting together and telling a story. And it's really super simple. There's not like Image that you can watch 5-6 documentaries on Image. There's a lot of drama and interesting history there, and talent and characters and stuff like that. But this is a little different in the way we just kind of tell stories.
I understand.
And with Erratic, Erratic in specific is part of a new universe. So it's like, as opposed to Image where they're self-contained isolated pods, Erratic is part of a new
shared universe.
And not every AWA book is like that, but definitely it was interesting to interface that way.
Yeah, and the
Understood.
other
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt, guys, because we got to go.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're up against the clock, and I know that the Justice League guys have entered the Watchtower, and Superman's giant key to the fortress isn't. They got to jiggle it.
Snyder cut.
We're trying to break in. Gentlemen, well done. Thank you very much. I'm sorry Axel Alonso couldn't have joined us, but that's all right. We did a great conversation. Everybody take care. Thanks for watching. Stick around in just a few minutes. It's the Justice League Bwahaha panel featuring all your favorite creators from 1987. J.M. DeMatteis, Keith Giffen, Kevin McGuire, and yours truly talking to them. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Take care.
Hang on, guys. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Baltimore Comic-Con Online live. John Suntress here from the Word Balloon Podcast. We have got 2/3, and we're expecting the other third to show shortly, of one of the best books of the 80s and 90s. Guys that reinvented the superhero team and brought new life and energy to the genre. I am happy to welcome J.M. DeMatteis and Kevin McGuire, 2/3 of the Justice League Bwahaha era. Gentlemen, welcome.
I'm waiting for the applause. Where is it?
It's
waiting there.
Got to do my radio stuff there. There you go.
First,
Guys,
I want to
great.
complain about my hotel room. I'm not very happy with the hotel room they gave me this year.
Hey, you can see my bathroom in the background. What are you talking about, man? How do you think I am? Good Lord. So it's
Kevin,
seriously
you look very like a ruler. You're sitting on your throne and you're about to issue some proclamation. You look very very august.
I'm just trying to figure out what the hell's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, we all are. That's all right, man. It's
My
great to
first
see.
time doing something like this.
It's great to see both of you. Truly excited to talk about this incredible landmark book. I mean, Mark, take us back to the beginning, because I'm assuming, maybe it started with Giffen. I don't know, but I know it was coming out of a couple of years before that. We had the incredible gritty time of Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen and, Crisis on Infinite Earths, a lot of heavy shit going on. And then all of a sudden there's this bright new day with Justice League. How did it start?
I'm tempted to just make stuff up because we told this story. So the first story I came up with is
weird stories that Giffen has to come in and fill in the blanks later. Just throw him
That's
off.
right. Keith actually had been blacklisted from comics, and at that point he had a little hot dog stand right outside of DC. Andy Helfer happened to be walking by one day and saw him and said, "Hey, you should come back to work." And that's really how it all started. How did it really start? Basically, it started with Keith and with Andy Helfer. We always have to say this right off the bat. Andy Helfer was a hugely important component of the book. He was the glue that held it together. He was the one that put all these disparate parts together that no one else would have ever put together. As you said, they had just, I guess it was out of Legends. Was it Legends, Kevin? That was yeah. And they were rebooting everything in sight, something that we haven't seen since.
Never.
So it was a very unique situation, and so Keith was originally going to write the book himself, but he'd plotted things, but he hadn't done a lot of actual writing. So he was intimidated, I think, and didn't really want to do that. So Andy, gave me this basic first draft that he had done of the first issue, saying Keith doesn't think he can do this. And I had been working with Andy. Well, Andy and I knew each other for quite a while, but I'd been working with him on the end of the previous Justice League, the JL Detroit. He hired me to basically knock them all off, at the end of that run. So he wanted me to come on and do this. And I looked at what Keith had done and I said, "You guys don't need me. Keith is great. He's fine just the way he is." That argument went on for some months after that. "You don't need me. I don't want to do this. Don't make me do this. I don't want to do this." And then it evolved into like the greatest gig ever once I just kind of relaxed and had fun. And so Andy pulled me in, and Kevin was just a mystery. I had never heard of him, And you can take it from there, Kevin.
I was doing art corrections at Marvel, was one of the remunerators, and Kurt Busiek saw my work. He was pitching a book called Wild Card for Andy Helfer, and I penciled the first issue of that. I still have the whole issue of that. I still have all the pencils for that whole issue sitting in like a drawer somewhere. And I was cocky enough to, and so I don't know how it happened, but someone at Marvel saw it and offered me Silver Surfer, starting with #1. And I was like, I was like stupid and cocky enough back then. It's like, yeah, I can do 2 monthly books, no problem. So I was like, well, I'll do both. I'll do both. And then Helfer in his wisdom was like, you know what, if you're going to do 2 books, do them here in this office. We've got this Justice League thing we're starting up. Maybe you would be good on that. And I was talking to Fabian Nicieza, who was working on staff at Marvel, and I was telling him, I got offered Silver Surfer, and then Andy counter offered with Justice League, and Fabian's like, oh no, Justice League, you get Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern, and I get the book, and it's like Blue Beetle and Guy Gardner, and I'm like, oh, who are these people? I don't know who these people are, which worked out well.
Yes.
We're definitely much better off having characters that nobody really cared about.
It's much better to have B-level characters because no one else is invested in that. No one else at the company is looking over your shoulder and telling you can't do that with Blue Beetle or Booster Gold or whoever it was, Mm-hmm. And so that gave us the freedom to essentially, with Andy's kind permission, do whatever the hell we wanted. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, wasn't it also, as you were saying, things were being rebooted? So, and I've seen this happen to other Justice League runs subsequently, where you can't use character A because we're doing something special with them. And that was happening with you guys, where, John Byrne was in the middle of, kind of rebranding Superman and Wonder Woman with George, with Perez and stuff. So right. You're given this opportunity with other B characters and this very unlikely group that, I mean, it's a great chance to kind of give them the personalities that they never had before.
Yeah, and we were. I guess it was Denny who had the kindness of soul to allow us to have Batman in the book. Because if you look at everybody else, there's like all these other characters and Batman. It's like. So that even back in my earlier days at Marvel, I wrote the Defenders for like 3 years, and just about every character I pulled in was a B-level character because I loved them, but they were characters that nobody cared about. So you could transform them into anything you wanted them to be. And that's what
impressed me about what Tom King has been doing nowadays. He takes these characters that nobody's doing anything with and then makes something out of them. And I think that's more impressive than doing yet another Batman or another Superman or another Wonder Woman.
Right. No, you're right, man. It's always the creators that dust these characters off and give them great stories. And Kevin, it's really interesting. Am I right mentioning also, Mark, the Defenders? Were you also when they did the Bwahaha, were you doing that Defenders little thing that they did? Were you the artist on that? Because hearing
miniseries,
you're talking about the miniseries that the three of us did?
Decades later.
Yes, decades later. It was Kevin. Yeah, okay. I was surprised because, well, you obviously were handling the Surfer then later, but it's interesting to hear that you were, contemplating a Surfer at that time. Because again, prior to you handling him, I would always think of him as a stoic character and not someone that would have a lot of great expressive emotion. And that always seemed to be a hallmark of, your art and everything, was the facial expressions and the character that was conveyed from, their emotions.
Well, in the Defenders thing we did, the only thing the Silver Surfer did was hang out on a beach the entire time.
That's right. One page per issue, pretty much. But I have to say, if you want donors, I'll say two things. Just one, I'll always have to say this at least once in every panel. No one does acting on the page the way Kevin does. I don't know where he got it from, where he came from. He appeared fully grown and did this brilliant stuff. And had he not drawn that book, we wouldn't be talking about it today. So we'll get that out of the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, give us the secret sauce, Kevin.
But the Surfer, you got to go back. John Buscema's Surfer was very expressive. He was always doing those Lord Byron poses and all that stuff.
Fair enough.
So there was a lot of emotion and expression in the Surfer.
I guess his confusion that you conveyed later with the Surfers and stuff is what made it cool. So yeah, I mean,
I would say bemusement.
Okay,
bemusement.
All right, fair enough, man. Right. It's in your hands, absolutely. Kevin, where did that emotional expression in your art? Where did it come from?
Well, I lead a troubled life, and No, well, I've always been into acting and improv and stuff like that. So I always approach all these things as what are the characters feeling at that moment, and how does that manifest itself? Just not only facially, but with body language. And it just to me, it's not something I thought about or tried to cultivate. It just seemed like, why isn't everyone doing it that way? It just seems logical.
Well, it certainly fit with what Mark and Keith were doing in terms of the dialogue. I mean, that's the great thing. And was it always meant to be a crazy humor book, Mark?
No. We there was no grand plan. We always like to say, not only was there no grand plan, there was no plan. I didn't know what I was getting into. Keith would do the plots. They would show up at my door. I'd look at them and I joke, but it's pretty true. I would write the first thing that came into my head, send it off to Andy, and he would, and that would be that. But Keith, by his nature, he was always slipping bits of humor into the plots. And the way our writing collaboration worked was I would pick up on what he did and then build on that. He would look at what I did in the dialogue, build that into the next plot, So he would take some situation, and I always joke, but it's true. And my job was to take a big hammer and beat the thing into the ground, Take it one good joke and repeat it 100 times, Take the page and fill it up with as much dialogue as I possibly could without giving the letter a complete nervous breakdown, But it obviously became a very dialogue-driven book. But there was no plan. We never said, "Oh, we are reacting to the very serious superhero stories that are out now, and we're going to do a lighter book." And it just evolved that way naturally. And you find it through your collaboration with each other, and you find it through the characters themselves. And I always say it's like the characters are ultimately the ones that lead us. We didn't say, let's turn Beetle and Booster into this great comedic team. They started talking on the page, and we, oh, that's pretty good. Let's do more with them, because they have great characters, have chemistry the way people have chemistry. And they click or they don't click, and Beetle and Booster click. So we followed them, and that created the whole Beetle and Booster thing. So no, the humor was not planned. It just
I don't think there was anything funny in the first issue.
No, it was maybe sort of a little more arch sarcastic, maybe, well, not flat out funny. I mean, was One Punch in the first issue, or was that later?
No. Which issue was it, Kevin, rather?
5.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone actually...
I know.
There you go. And
when the terrorists take over the UN.
Right, that's right.
It didn't really seem like there was any sort of interaction between the characters. It was more like just a setup, really.
Yeah. So it evolved. And then the more we saw who these guys were, and the more, Keith would set up these situations, and I would start them blathering on the page, and then Kevin would bring them to life in this incredible way that he did. It all just sort of happens. You can't plan something like this. You just can't. It either happens or it doesn't, and it just kind of happened.
Because if they could plan it, they would.
Right, that's right.
Here's an interesting question. Is that Bad Freeze? It is. Guys, were you worried about disrespecting the characters' creators, like Steve Ditko, who created Blue Beetle, for example?
No, not because... Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I'm kidding. I was like, every minute I was hoping to God I was going to insult Steve Ditko.
Kevin really disliked Steve Ditko. He couldn't wait to disrespect him.
No, I don't think anyone was trying.
Because we weren't treating the characters, and we weren't mocking the characters. We loved those characters. It was a different interpretation. If it was like a book where we were like mocking these characters and trying to drag them down, you know what I mean? But that wasn't what the book was about. It was about having fun with them. It was about, in many ways, to me, I think, making them even more real, because I think the humor makes the characters more real.
I always thought that it was like a baseball team, that when they're in the field, they're serious and they're doing their job. But when they're in the locker room or in the bar afterwards, that's when all the character dynamic and funny stuff happens.
Keith always used to liken it to, remember Barney Miller?
Yeah,
of course.
And all of Barney Miller took place in the police station, not when they were out running around and doing police work. It was all that other interaction. And again, that wasn't what we set out to be, but that's what it evolved into when we saw that the best moments were just the character moments, the interactive moments. And yeah, we would do our periodic big action beats and everything. But the most fun we ever had was just having the characters sitting around talking to each other.
Those are the best parts of the book, absolutely. Or like you said, I mean, everyone remembers Guy Gardner, One Punch, that just challenge, and Batman being the ultimate straight man for this group, and just it really, everything really just fit in. And then all these other interesting things like Dr. Light, the Asian Dr. Light, and
Who
Dr.
lasted, what, 2 issues? Dr. Light was there for 2 issues. I have to say, John, I still to this day have no idea how they chose the characters, because I came in and they handed me a plot, and I don't know whether it was
Legends.
What?
Didn't they come out of Legends?
Did they come directly out of Legends at the end of that? I don't know.
At the end of Legends was the first time you saw that group assembled.
Okay, but so somebody somewhere said, let's use these guys.
Yeah,
it wasn't our choice,
Yeah.
No, or Black Canary without Green Arrow. I mean, things like pre-Birds of Prey. So I mean, for a younger audience, they may not realize that a lot of these characters, this was really their first big moment where there was a lot of focus on them in a different way. And also, my favorite little thing, Martian Manhunter's addiction to Oreos. Where the hell did that come from?
It was the way these things work. I would imagine my vague memory is, and if Keith was here, he would correct me, wouldn't you, Keith? Yes, I would.
He's going to show up like 5 minutes before the end of this thing. Did it start yet?
I called him this morning, so I said, "So do we just phone in?" I said, "Keith, it's not a phone call; it's a video thing." Yeah. Anyway, what the hell was I saying? Oh, right. So I might have had thrown something in the dialogue where John mentions that he loves Oreos. There would be something thrown in there. Keith would see that and then start to build on that. And then before you know it, it's a full-blown addiction. Or one of my favorite things was, I think it was in the big Despero storyline. Over several issues, I had Blue Beetle running around talking about, oh God, I'm really out of shape. I'm eating too much. I'm gaining weight. I can't. And then a few issues later, I open up the plot, and Keith now has him like weighing like 190 pounds or 200. Well, he was fat, bursting out of his costume, And so I would throw in something in the dialogue. Keith would build on that, or vice versa. I would find something in Keith's plot. Oh, he mentioned an Oreo cookie. Well, why don't we do this? And it would just build that way.
It's like comic book improv. It's like you guys were yes-ending each other.
It really was. It was completely that way. And the great thing about working with Keith was, because I've worked with other people where I've dialogued their plots, and some people are very, very territorial and very uptight, and they want you to execute their vision. That's not what this book was. Keith was free to do whatever he wanted to do, and I was then free to take that and spin it in any direction I wanted to spin it. And he always loved that, and then would take that and run with it, because that's the way Keith is creatively. He's very spontaneous. Incredibly spontaneous.
We're already getting some amazing questions, and I want to ask, this is a great one. Any blowback from the Church of Scientology about Elron? Indeed.
It's so funny, because I made that name up, and it wasn't really meant as a dig at Scientology. It was just a funny name, because all these robots will have like a letter and whatever. And I just thought that was very, very funny. We had a robot named J-Lo later. I think there was one on the ship as well, or something like that. But no, I don't think we ever heard a word, or if DC got any letters from Scientology, they didn't tell us.
And then here's another one that I like. A. Cheng asks, and this would be interesting. Any chance we'd get a black label Justice League? And they're saying 3002, but I mean, I'd even like to see the Bwahaha guys treated in a black label way, and maybe not. And I forgive the comparison; it's the first thing that's coming to mind. But almost more of a National Lampoon, but not as dirty necessarily as National Lampoon guy. But
give Keith free reign, it'll get dirty.
And it will be a very different book. Yeah, honestly, that doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I always say I would work with these guys at any time on anything, and I mean that. I mean, Millie the Model, Sergeant Fury, Space Cabbie. I don't care,
Space Cabbie,
because
please.
it's the way it's evolved over the years. It's less about it. It's the collaboration is what excites me, and then we take it and go from there. I always say we got together 10 years later for. I can't believe it's not the Justice League. And it wasn't until 10 years later that any of us kind of tumbled to the fact that what we did together was particularly good. Because Justice League, I mean, it was popular, but to me at the time, it was a fun gig. It was another gig. It went 5 years. It was over.
Wow.
And then we got together 10 years later, and it was all of a sudden, at least for me, I don't know how it was for you, Kevin, I was like, this is really good. We really need to keep doing this, because when we get together, we create something that we can't create individually.
We got an Eisner for that.
That's right, we did.
Wow.
Now, Kevin,
There you
when
go.
we were working on the book, Kevin, did you feel like we were like some really great team? Did you feel that this was like something hugely special, or was it just a fun gig for you?
Well, I didn't really have any frame of reference in so
Right. Oh, that's true.
everything I've done. So
Right.
is this how it always is? I don't know.
Right.
In retro, well, the thing is, I don't really, you and Keith interact significantly more than I interact with you guys. I get the script and then I go.
Right.
So it's tough to say. It's like, it's not, there really isn't as much interacting in the creative process for me.
But what's interesting is that on the original, years later, Keith and I interacted more. On the original Justice League run, it was a machine. I would get Keith's plot. I wasn't talking to Keith on the phone all the time. I'd see him up at DC every couple of weeks. Andy'd take us out to lunch and we'd go pick up our checks. And Kevin would be chained to a desk up in Andy's office. And but it wasn't like people always think, oh, you're in a writing team, so you must be on the phone or in the same room. No, I'd get the plot. I'd write what I wrote. I honestly, most of the time, didn't know what was going to be in the book until I got it, and would often have to call Andy up and say, so what's happening in this story? He would explain it, and off I'd go and write it. And I also, a lot of times I didn't even know who some of these characters were. One of the reasons why they had interesting interpretations sometimes is because I didn't know who they were, so I was just faking it. And I didn't have time to do like tons of research. I had never heard of Booster Gold, honest to God, until he turned up in the pages of Justice League. I had no idea who the character was. So I followed Keith's lead and we build on that and off we went.
How did Jurgens feel about what you guys did with Booster?
I have no idea. He hasn't come after any of us, and so I think it's okay. I mean,
sure
honestly,
it is. My God,
it took the character and made him very, very popular.
Yeah,
and then he was able to return to that character after that and do great things with it. So
100%, man. No, I completely agree with that, and I'm sure that's why I almost wondered if it's like, hey, this is great, and if anything, maybe because it did re-energize the character in a lot of great ways. And look at all the amazing things people have been able to do with him since. And also, Guy Gardner. There's a great opportunity because really he was the third string Lantern, it seemed, behind Hal and John. So that's kind of neat and a great opportunity to just make him, the jerk that he was with that Mo Howard haircut and that Mo Howard attitude, frankly. Was there, I mean, honestly, again, as writer and designer, was there a Three Stooges vibe in Guy?
Well, when did he get? He had that haircut before we got him, didn't he?
I didn't give him that haircut.
So I think maybe
Black Canary costume. I didn't make up that. I didn't make up the Guy Gardner hair or anything like that. I was a new kid. I was just handed stuff and say, "Oh yes, sir, I'll do whatever you want."
I understand.
Yeah. So again, it's just I vaguely knew who Guy Gardner was, but I was just following Keith's lead. And that's why I'll always give Keith, in our collaboration, I'll give him 55%, just because he had to face the blank page. So I never had to worry about facing the blank page. Even if what I wrote, the great thing about dialogue, especially in a free collaboration like I have with Keith, I could write a whole different story on top of the original story. His plot will still be under there, and I could add all these other elements that aren't even in there. I mean, years later when we did I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League, and there was this whole plot line with Ralph and Sue, and Sue, Ralph thinking Sue was pregnant and all that. And those kind of things were all just added. Or we had Manga Con, Keith threw in Manga Con, and he was this big kind of Galactus-y guy. So I decided to do like a Stan Lee satire. And there was just this kind of random robots who I turned into Elron, And then the flip side of that is sometimes I'd get the plot and there was so much great Keith stuff in it, I didn't have to do much of anything, and I felt guilty cashing the check. I still cashed it, but I felt guilty.
Wow, this is it. I'm reading again. You'll forgive me some of the chat. And I didn't start reading comics until 2014 and was seeing direct references to this run. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I was going to say, guys. Seriously, you think of things like Netflix, Next Wave, and some of the other, attempts at superhero humor and stuff. God, Jason Aaron did it with the X-Men when Wolverine was running the mutant school, and I think had a lot of humor in there. And just prior to what you guys all did, I don't really remember that level of characterization happening in comics. And maybe it was just part of the zeitgeist of the 80s. And that, if you could speak to that at all in terms of, again, just it was in the air, I suppose.
You know, the 80s, looking back, you don't know it when you're in the middle of it. The 80s was an incredible time. You know, I'm always amazed that there was a period where I was writing Craven's Last Hunt and Justice League at the same time, you know,
Yes.
completely different stories, and Moonshadow and Blood and all these different things that were each one, because there was a lot of space. We were given a lot of creative space, not just with creator own stuff, but on these books with established characters. So there was just a lot of creativity in the air and a lot of freedom on mainstream books. You know, to do what we did with Justice League, to do what I did with Craven, it was a great time. But you know, when you're in the middle of it, you're just living your life and doing your gig, and then you look back and go, "Wow, that was incredible."
Agreed, Kevin. You had no pushback, obviously, from obviously Andy understood what you guys were doing, so I would imagine they were cool with what you were putting out there as far as the art.
Yeah, they kept me on. Yeah, they didn't fire me, so.
We didn't fire him. He abandoned us.
Yeah, you know, honestly, Kevin, was it a personality? Like, you know, I mean, just like, hey, creative groups, they're like rock bands, any sort of collaboration.
I'm not as time has proven in the last 30 years, I'm not a monthly penciler. So just the monthly thing was just not, I'm not wired for that.
Understood. Yeah.
He would come back periodically and he'd do lots of covers, right? He did a lot of covers, I think, after that stuff.
Yeah.
And then we had the fun of getting back together, you know, for those 2 Justice League miniseries and Defenders, and it was great.
And
Metalman was great.
Yes, absolutely. And am I correct, Kevin? You did not do for Boom Planetary Brigade, which had Keith and Mark. Am I correct?
That was Hero Squared and Planetary Brigade. No, Kevin didn't do that. Considering what the page rates were for artists, Kevin couldn't possibly have done that. He did do a cover for us, though. He did a great cover.
And truly, Kevin, I'm always happy. And when we do have conventions again, I love the fact that you have created different versions of a lot of your classic covers and moments with other groups of characters or other characters getting punched. And that's outstanding, man. I mean, I love that you've done that. That's great.
I that #1 cover to death. And I'm going to be milking it to death. If I have to be stuck with a layout, I'm very happy that that's the one, because that's like right up my alley in terms of it's all people and there's no backgrounds.
Well, and no lie, man, that's like the Sgt. Pepper cover of comics, because it truly is.
That's a great way to put it.
You know, I mean, yeah, it's so iconic, and it was so different. And then, of course, then you had the subsequent companion cover with the bigger Justice League and stuff, all like looking up and like, what are you looking at, kind of basically.
Then we did the Justice League Antarctica one where they were facing the wrong way.
I really do have to put together like a sketchbook or something of like every different iteration of that cover, because I've done a shitload. Am I allowed to curse?
You're absolutely allowed to curse, by all means, man.
Quite a bit of commissions of different iterations of that cover.
I believe it, man. That's fantastic. And again, it's just emblematic of the tone of that book. It really and it truly, again, as a reader, it was like, what the hell is this? And I mean, I was always a Justice League fan, but we knew we were going to get something different with this book. And reading in Amazing Heroes, the previews for it and stuff, and the other comic magazines of the time, it was really an exciting time, man. Oh, and this is funny.
I just want to say, I didn't even feel like I was writing the Justice League. I wrote this book that happened to be called Justice League, but it had nothing to do with the Justice League as it wasn't until I wrote for the Justice League Unlimited TV show that I finally got to write the Justice League, you know?
Wow, that's true. And all right, now I got to ask, because I don't think I've ever seen the full 90s TV movie that was kind of really inspired by...
It's out there on the internet. It's out there.
Yeah.
David Ogden Steyer's Charles Winchester from MASH was the Martian Manhunter, eating way too many Oreos, frankly, but kind of in its own way, almost fitting. And yeah, it seemed to want to do the attitude that you guys did. And again, no disrespect to anybody making movies or television or whatever, but the magic wasn't there.
I don't think people hadn't yet figured out how to do this stuff yet. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was going to say we could disrespect them a little.
Now, I do want to say, because I remember there was some other guys, and it wasn't these guys, Keith and I holed up at DC for a couple of days with these TV writers who were writing a TV movie. I think it was a TV movie. And they were developing a pretty good script, as I recall, but I have no idea whatever happened to it. Or I don't even remember who those guys were. But we sat down and went over their script and talked to them and everything. And I didn't see that particular movie till years later when it showed up online. Yeah.
Here's an interesting comment. I think one of the most iconic moments of Kevin at the JLI is that silence sequence between Guy Gardner and Mr. Miracle after the invasion tie-ins. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's it is interesting. It's just weird. It's just weird what sticks after 30 years. Like what, because you're just sitting there drawing that page. Like I would love to know where exactly I was sitting when I drew the one. I guess I was probably sitting next to Helper's desk, but. When I drew the one punch thing, I never in a million years imagined that 30 years later I'd still be talking about that one panel.
Right.
That just amazes me what connects with people and what doesn't. Because when I'm drawing, and I'm not sitting there saying this is gonna be legendary. You just never know. And and I think I personally consider it very fortunate that a lot of people way more talented than I am. Never had an opportunity to be involved in a project that hit people in the right spot, for so many people. I just consider myself fortunate that, I'm not a.
No, but he's right. I mean, I think about this over and over with Justice League because people, you go to conventions. And I'd say a third of what I sign is probably Justice League. And it's not just old fans, it's people that are just discovering it now. Yeah. And it's an amazing thing, I just want to go back to what you were saying about that little sequence, the post-invasion sequence, if it's the one I'm thinking of, because what Kevin would do, especially as you evolved, and he wouldn't necessarily follow Keith's breakdowns the way Keith had them. He would evolve the sequence to get more reactions in there. So there might be a bit of dialogue back and forth, and Kevin then might add 2 or 3 panels of reaction before the next line came, which added so much to what was being done. He was in a lot of ways, directing the film, So here's the rat-a-tat dialogue, and he's thinking, well, I think that we need to have Guy kind of do this first, or do this, and then comes the kicker. So that's a great skill, and not everybody can do that.
But getting back to what you were just saying about like new generations, I am continually amazed when I go to conventions and I see like 15-year-old girls dressed up as Blue Beetle and Booster.
Yes.
You weren't even born when we were doing this.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
There's so many Beatles and Boosters that I run into at these conventions. And there are a lot of them are girls. It's true.
On the one punch moment, Kevin, was there ever a thought? Because I remember when Jla Avengers came out with Perez and Kurt Busiek, and Cap and Batman kind of size each other up and are like, all right, listen, obviously we're both great combatants. Let's just talk and not even fight. And a lot of people were disappointed. Was there ever a consideration of a real choreographed fight between Batman and Guy Gardner? Or was it always...
I ask Keith if he ever shows up.
All right.
He's been under my table the whole time. Let me ask him.
I don't want to hear any details.
He doesn't want to talk. He won't come out. He's got a little bowl under there, and he's very content.
I got to be honest, man. When you guys got Keith to agree to come on, I'm like, is this going to happen? Because he's.
Come on, did we?
It's all right.
The great mystery.
Well, the good news is we're doing fine, so it's all right. Let's see. I'm looking other possible things. Let's see here. I wish that Jla Avengers would have been re-released. Oh, that's it. Yeah, me too, man. That was a great run. Has nothing to do with the guys right now. But
legalities.
Oh, here we go. Now, Len, the Englishman in San Diego, he's got a good point here. People talk about how funny the book was, and it was funny. But my gods, there was some real dark steel under the humor. That's what got me hooked. The Gray Man. Yeah, the Gray Man. Absolutely chilling.
Yeah.
Well, you look at I don't know, a show like MASH, or I think those early 70s sitcoms, All in the Family, where they would be hysterically funny one moment, and then they could spin it around into tragedy in the next moment. And it was really important to us to periodically make sure that it wasn't all just laughs, that you could then which would then shock the readers even more because they would be really, really comfortable with the humor, and then some tragic thing would happen. Or was it in I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League, where Ice was trapped in hell? I think there was that great sequence.
Yeah.
Not funny, and that's important. Max getting shot. There were a lot of things like that. Blue Beetle went insane and tried to assassinate somebody. I don't remember who. But it was always that balance. It wasn't just the laughs. And again, the laughs weren't there just for the jokes. The laughs were there to illuminate the characters.
And humor is a great way to connect people or an audience with a character and relate to them, so that when you do put them through tough times later, they're more emotionally invested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys, Batfreeze asks, and I've seen a couple other people ask this question as well. Certainly people play with these same characters you guys did now decades later. And do you care about what people do with the characters you spend a lot of time working on? And they give the example of Max Lord.
I'll start. You go into this knowing that you don't own any of this.
Right.
They're not our characters. They're DC's characters, and we're just temporary custodians of them. And then they will move on. The only time I was ever bothered was when they had Maxwell Lord kill Blue Beetle, because we were doing the second Justice League miniseries.
Right.
We were still working on that as that came out. So it was like, so essentially that book said everything that we had been doing for years was a lie. That Max was not the character that we had been portraying him. He's actually been something else. Again, I don't own the character. We don't own the character, so we can't say anything. But that to me was like, maybe have him get taken over by an alien, become evil, fine. But to say that everything we had been doing all along was not true, that was, I don't know.
There was a period at DC where it seemed like they just wanted to kind of throw out everything that we did. But kind of what Kevin's saying is true. We didn't, when we started on that book, they were somebody else's characters. So somebody else was complaining about what we did, I'm sure. So that's just the nature of the beast in comics. And those stories I always felt exist in their own universe anyway. In fact, when Keith and I did Justice League 3000, that was our idea, was this is a completely separate universe from the DC universe. That, this is our universe, and they're just stories. So enjoy the stories. You can go back at any point and read those stories and enjoy those stories, and read the other stories about that other Maxwell Lord and whatever, Ultimately, you hope that it's a good story and people can return to it and enjoy it.
You know what I think it should be? Because I don't know how many Earths there are in the DC multiverse, but every Earth should be a different writer's.
Right, you said that before. Yeah, I agree.
There's Earth Frank Miller. There's Earth John Byrne. There's Earth Brian Bendis. So that continuity is consistent on that Earth and has nothing to do with the other Earths. I
know that Mark has flirted with a lot of creator-owned stuff. Kevin, have you wanted to do any creator-owned projects?
Oh yeah.
Are they still coming then? Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. I'm working on one now.
Great.
It's a cross between Ray Harryhausen and Chuck Jones.
Fun.
It's about the Joe Bluth of Mount Olympus. So it's not a heavy drama.
Clearly.
But I'm having a blast doing it, and I've been sitting on creator-owned ideas for like decades, and I just turned 60, and it's like, I have to start doing these things now, or I'm never going to do them.
I totally understand, man. Absolutely. Here they go. Batfreeze, give McGuire and DeMatteis their own DeMatteis, excuse me. Mark,
I accept both.
15 years later, I'm still doing it, Mark. I apologize.
Don't worry about it.
But that's all right. But yeah, I'd like to see both of you get your own Earth. That would be amazing. That's
the comics. Just give us our own Earth, right?
Much like Booster and Beetle having their island. What was the name of the island?
Cooey. Don't ask me where I came up with that from. It was just like, I don't know. I got to name this island. This is what it's going to be called.
Or how about Bwahaha, to do an extended laugh like that?
We have, and Keith and I to this day, which we love, is neither one of us knows who came up with that. My memory was that was in Keith's plot in one place, And I just thought that was the funniest thing. So I did what I do and just kept repeating it, repeating it. And he swears that he saw it in my script first, and then he started doing it. So who knows? It was, it became a mind meld at a certain point. We couldn't tell who came up with what.
The truth is I came up with it.
What?
I said the truth is I came up with it.
Attaboy, Kev, absolutely.
Is all the great ideas that we had came from Kevin, and the reason he left the book is that we were very jealous of his genius. And we forced him off.
And again, you guys have produced incredible other non-humor books like this. So, is this a compliment that this run is so beloved and remembered, and we're all like, gee, will you do more? Because we really do love it when you guys come back and do another. In fact, someone had asked if the current regime or even Didio had said to you guys, hey, let's do another, humor book.
No, they never came to us. They didn't. That's just
we were like 3 or 4 years ago, we were trying to get a 30th anniversary one-shot.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Wow.
And it was going to be fun. I mean, we were just like batting ideas back and forth. It was going to be the characters 30 years older, like Rush. Guy Gardner would be like a Rush Limbaugh. Booster and Beetle would be like doing conventions.
Right. Selling autographs to make a living.
Fire was 30 years older, but I stay the same age.
That's right. I forgot about that, and then we pitched it, and nobody.
Yeah.
That's amazing because, man, especially it's so funny right now what they were going to do with 5G that is now morphed into Future State, this event that's coming at the beginning of next year. One of the subjects we're going to be covering on Baltimore Comic-Con on a panel. That's really amazing because you would think that absolutely would have dovetailed in that,
It all comes down to somebody's whim, somebody sitting behind a desk.
What'd you say, Kev?
I was saying it was just a one shot. We weren't looking for like a 6-issue mini. It's like a one shot. But I have been told from someone. I don't want to get gossipy, but I've been told from someone well informed that certain people don't think superheroes should be funny, which is why they really haven't gotten us to do anything more. That's what I've been told. I don't know.
But they keep reprinting it every 5 minutes, so I mean, obviously, it's profitable.
Oh, they're like,
it's consistent with things I've heard as well, so that's disappointing. But again, things have changed, so we'll see what the future holds. So I'm happy. Yeah. No, and honestly, guys, it's interesting because you mentioned a one shot. From a formatic standpoint, do you guys think? I mean, do you wonder what's going to happen to the monthly comic book? I almost wonder if DC and Marvel are considering digital first to replace the monthly paper issue, and then, does that impact what you guys think about?
For me, the thing with digital has less to do with what DC and Marvel are doing. It's more to do with what we as creators can do with our own work and making it easier to get it out in the world. I'm working on 3 or 4 different creator-owned things right now with different artists, and some of it will be, the idea is just to put it out digitally and screw the middleman, just get the work out there. So that's what's exciting to me about digital.
That's exactly it. That's the creator-owned thing I'm working on. Is my intention is just to sell it as an ebook. I made that decision after the Diamond shut down, and it's like, you know what? We got the internet here. Let me just try that. And what I'm liking about that is, number one, like you were saying about the middleman, I don't have to get the approval of an editor, of a publisher, of a distributor. I don't have to get, I can just do what I want to do. It's like doing a podcast as opposed to doing like a radio show.
That's right.
You don't have to get the approval of anyone else. You do what you want. And what I'm enjoying about it is I'm working on it. It's like, this needs another moment. I'm going to add another page.
Right.
And you do that because there's no, there's no limitation in terms of how long a particular book should be.
I agree with everything you're saying, guys. And truly, it's been part of the conversation, not just with what's been happening at both DC and Marvel, but like you said, with the Diamond shutdown too. And it's clear that creators like this freedom. Is crowdfunding something you guys are considering with your
That's one
career
of
and stuff?
one of the projects that I'm working on. Probably early next year, we're going to do a Kickstarter for. I've never done it. We're going to try it and see what's what. Yeah.
No, I'm going to do what I'm going to do is I'm drawing the first issue, then I'm going to put it out there as an ebook, sell it as an ebook, and hopefully it'll make enough money that it can finance me into while I'm making the second one.
Yeah, it's great. I think because of COVID, a lot of us are thinking in the same way, and I think there's going to be a lot of amazing work next year because we're all sort of going off into our corners to do the passion projects that we want to do.
And
my friend,
there will be Marvel or DC or any of this,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's funny. Where is it? Comic Pop. Yes, I'm honestly surprised Marvel never poached this dream team to make a JL-inspired West Coast Avengers or something. Well, they did, as we were talking about earlier.
Avengers instead.
Yeah. So how was that? Like, was there ever talk to do?
Wait, what'd you say, Kevin?
Where we were offered West Coast Avengers, or wasn't it something like that? But we did instead.
I don't remember. I have no idea. I just remember, the way Keith called me up and said, "Let's do Defenders." I said, "Okay," and that's all I remember about it. Yeah. And we were going to do another Defenders, and I don't remember what happened after that or why we didn't do it. There was talk of us doing.
Probably read the one we did.
That's what I.
And they still use my Dormammu design for the video games.
Really?
Wow.
Oh
man, we got to get you Chicken's lawyer and make something happen with that, Kevin. If they really did rip that off, come on.
I don't get anything from Maxwell Lord.
You don't get
that. No one got it. No one's gotten back to me about that yet.
Wow. Yeah,
well, let's talk about this separately, but
I understand. No. But we were wondering if there was a response to the Defenders run to suggest other Marvel projects, because that was, again, we all of us that were reading JLI and everything, we loved it. So
there was also Keith was, I think, after that exclusive to DC, so we couldn't have done anything as a trio for Marvel.
I would kill for the three of us to do Fantastic Four.
We all agree on that.
That would make sense.
Fantastic Four, you look at the old Lee Kirby Fantastic Four, and it was great, cosmic adventure. But there was a lot of humor in that book and a lot of stuff for us to build on. I would set it in that era too, and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Is it true that Maxwell Lord was originally based, at least visually, on Sam Neill? Were there any actors, or was it Sam Neill? Was that your inspiration?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's great. I'm a big fan. I loved The Dish, that movie he made about Australia's part in the Apollo project. I thought was just a terrific Sam Neill movie, mentioning Sam Neill. And I can see him being Max Lord. That's cool. That's interesting. Was there any, you'll forgive me, was there any Trumpian sort of 80s Trumpian thing with Max Lord?
Well, we discussed this on Twitter, me and Mark. I always thought of him. Well, I always thought of him as a cross between Donald Trump and Bill Murray.
Interesting.
In that he was.
I love that mix.
A charming con man, but still a con man. But this was before.
But charming,
right,
and intelligent.
Bill Murray.
And he had a heart.
Yeah,
that's the Bill Murray part. Absolutely, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Jesus.
All right, I'm looking at the time. We should wrap up soon. I do want to give you guys an opportunity to talk about what you're currently working on. Mark, we're loving all the animation stuff you're doing, but I also know that you're doing a writer's seminar, which, who better to learn from than Mark?
The Deathstroke movie is out now. Superman Red Sun came out in the spring. Batman Death in the Family has 2 shorts that I wrote, Death and Adam Strange. In November, I've been doing this workshop on and off for years, Imagination 101, and I've wanted to take it online. And now, of course, I have no choice but to take it online. So in November, we're doing it it's 10 hours over the course of 2 weekends, and it's going to be great. It's looking at the art and craft of writing, the practical, the metaphysical, every aspect. So if anyone's interested, they can go to comixplex.com, COMIXPLEX.com, and try to keep it small, 10 or 12 people at most. So it's going to be a really fun, intimate couple of weekends. And as I said, I'm also working on like 3 or 4 different creator-owned books right now, and just had a Star Trek thing that came out at IDW, so it's been busy.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk Star Trek in the next couple of weeks, Mark.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kevin, what do you got coming up?
Just what I said, the creator-owned thing I'm working on.
Okay.
Just going back and forth between commissions and working on that.
I'm really glad you're doing that, man. Because seriously, I mean, I'm in my mid-50s, and I know that it's not a question of not being able to do it anymore, but just being aware that the clock's running. And it's like, hey, if you want to do this stuff, get them done. I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'm totally with you. So that's terrific. Truly, guys, congratulations. I'm glad that this run is still remembered as fondly as it is, and of course it is, because again, it was a magic bunch of years. And I'm sorry that JD Salinger couldn't join us to give his point of view, but that's okay. No,
But I'm not surprised.
If we would have bet on this, we would have come out with a lot of money, right?
This is true. This is true. Jesus. Well, Mark, I look forward to our next conversation on Word Balloon.
Same here, John.
Kevin, I hope you'll consider coming on a solo chat with me on Word Balloon sometime.
Yeah, okay, sure.
You know, that'd be great, man.
And Kevin will talk about the Maxwell Lord thing.
Okay.
That's awesome. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We got other great panels coming tonight. Everybody sit tight. In just a few minutes, I believe next is, am I right? Isn't it another two other great creators talking? Yeah, Bendis and Jerry Conway in conversation. I was really happy that both of them agreed to do this. I am looking forward to it. It's just minutes away. But everybody, great questions in the chat. Thank you very much. And I hope you're enjoying Baltimore Comic-Con. This is just the beginning, kids. We've got lots more programming tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday. It's going to be incredible. But thanks a lot for watching. And guys, thank you very much for
Thanks,
being part
John.
of this.
Thank you, John.
See you, Kevin.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to our continued coverage of Baltimore Comic-Con Live. We've kicked it off. It's Friday. This is a very exciting panel we're about to kick off right now. I want to give a huge thank you to Mr. John Suntress over at Word Balloon. He's been absolutely crushing it, moderating all these panels. But we're going to let him take a little bit of a break, I believe, and we're going to have two of some of the biggest names in comic books right here talking about oh man, I can just see him back there. I can't wait to bring him on. So I'm not going to waste any more time, guys. Let me bring him on. We got Mr. Brian Michael Bendis. How you doing, man?
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. Last time we saw you was on Mainframe, and you were in this beautiful outside kind of vista setting. It's good to see you back indoors, surrounded by comic books.
There you go. Back in my mirror cave.
Let me go ahead and bring in your co-panelist here, Mr. Jared Conway.
Drum roll.
Drum roll, drum roll. There he is. Jared, can you hear us and see us okay? Sounds like he might be having a bit of a technical glitch here. Jared, tell you what, why don't you try logging out, logging back in. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Mr. Suntress for just a second, John, if that's okay. John, you've been absolutely killing it here at Baltimore Comic-Con, I got to say.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Absolutely. We'll figure out what's going on with Jerry, and can't wait to start. Okay, he says he's okay now. Let's try him now. How about now, Jerry?
There you go.
Hey, there we go.
Excellent. All right, we're gonna get out of here and let you guys get to your conversation.
All right, but jump in if you need. And are people asking questions too in the comments?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
Oh
yes.
yeah, we'll be putting questions up throughout. So guys, go ahead and get your questions in for these great gentlemen, and have a fun hour.
All right, great. Well, hello, Jerry.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing? Where are you in the world?
Well, I'm in Thousand Oaks, which is in California, the Free State, and we're having a moderately fine time, comparatively. How about you?
All right. Now I'm in Portland, so everything's a little stressful, but as advertised, but which is weird because it wasn't the way it was here for many, many years. But yeah, it's been a hell of a summer. So but you're safe and everyone's okay. House is good.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, good.
We're good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So I always bring up because sometimes I get from readers. It's unclear like who knows who and who's friends with who and who lives in a house together. Like some people think we're like it's like the real world, like the old real world where we're all like living in a house together. And because
that was actually true in the early 70s.
Yeah, and also today it's still true. And then there's people like I'm doing a panel on Sunday with Mike Oming. He's like my brother. We're family forever and ever. You and I don't know each other at all, not at all. So
I've met a couple of times, and that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to let everybody know this is like a first actual conversation, but it's in person, which is a different tone than if we had a history together.
Sure.
Our history is growing shared life experience. You paved a road, and I'm just walking down that road as fast as I can. So I wanted to talk to you about some of those places on the road. I did want to start, if I can, with the Punisher saga that happened this summer and where it is now. If you're up for talking about it, if you don't feel like talking about it, I respect that as well.
No. I'm actually pretty proud of the creators who became involved in this project. As you know, there's always been this controversy. Well, in recent years, a controversy about police and military using the Punisher symbol on their vehicles, on their uniforms, and it's been, it's been used, I think, in a way to intimidate and try to impress a particular political point of view that the Punisher as a character, in my view, doesn't represent. And as the guy who co-created him, I think I have some authority on that. So, yeah. So when the Black Lives Matter movement started up, and we saw some instances of militia types and police type people using the Punisher symbol on their vehicles and gear, my wife and I thought, well, this would be something that we could possibly reappropriate and turn to the advantage of the movement. So we came up with this notion of asking young artists of color through Twitter to create logos featuring Black Lives Matter and the Punisher skull, which we would then put on T-shirts that people could buy. And with that purchase, we would contribute the full value, of the profits to Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, which we ended up raising about $75,000 for the movement here, which was really impressive. Yeah, we sold over 5,000 T-shirts, and we had about 21 artists contributing logos, and it was really very touching, very,
that's amazing,
very impressive. Yeah. And I hope to see some of those shirts, in protest movements in the future. So,
well, I had a vaguely unique perspective on this as you were dealing with this, that first wave of what I'm sure was stressful. The same day, Miles was at the same protest. Like there were people representing Miles at the Black Lives Matter movement in the way I would only dream of, like
right.
a perfect representation. And then you were there having the opposite experience, like
yes.
Same thing. But then but what's interesting was what a decades long journey this is for you with this character, and to get to a place where unironically misunderstanding the character, to the point where and then I couldn't help but think about, is there a version where decades from now this happens to Miles? I'm sure there was a point where you couldn't even imagine the Punisher being misappropriated like this, right?
Well, I couldn't even have imagined the Punisher having the longevity
that's
and the reinvention, over the years. He was. It was not intended as a character that, when we initially conceived him, wasn't even going to be more than a one-shot or two-shot, character. The credit really goes to the people who've taken the character after my time on it and developed him into an iconic figure. But I think it is important to try to get back to basics, and it is weird. I mean, I imagine. You over the years, you've created characters and possibly seen them taken over by other writers. And what are your thoughts? I mean, as you see these things go on,
Well, I've had that's why I think about this with you a lot, because I've had an enormous amount of good luck in this regard. Jessica Jones being taken care of by superior storytellers to me, and then Miles getting getting an Oscar and Jessica getting a Peabody. I mean, this is way higher goals than I had in my heart for the characters. You dream, but no one, but where the luck comes in is that it's kind of like your kid goes off to college. You've done your best, and you hope, and you're there for them if they need you, but they're on their own, right? Miles is out there, and now every day. And also I have Miles never stops. Now with the video game and the Spider Cat, my whole feed is just filled with love and giggles, and it's everything you'd ever want. And I didn't do it, right? I'm not the author of this, so I can just sit back and enjoy it. And I really do enjoy it. But I would really not enjoy what happened to you. And I think about it because it's out of our hands. That's my point, is that with what happens with Miles is it's out of my hands. And boy, am I lucky. Just look at all these people who care about him adding their truth to it. Right. And then you have,
but in the case of Punisher, what's neat is that the misuse of the character actually gives me a platform to speak out for my own, political or social beliefs. So, when there's an article about a Punisher symbol appearing in an inappropriate way, I can then respond to it, and it is almost immediately picked up, by at least our particular media. But then sometimes it breaks through to a larger media. So it's an opportunity to be used, and that was kind of why I was both upset but pleased, by the opportunity to do something powerful with the help of other creators this summer.
A lot of our peers sometimes make things worse when things get weird, and you handle that as just about as elegantly and perfectly as possible. Other peers were talking about behind your back about how cool it was to see how you handled it. I just wanted to share that with you, because I know a lot of us are just alone in our rooms, not hearing from anybody. Just want to let you know that one, the commentary about how you handled it was inspiring to us. It certainly made us if that happens, that's how to handle it. So thank you for that.
Well, you have to just sort of try to roll with it, but at the same time guide it a little bit, with your own belief structure, however that. Whatever you personally want to bring to it.
I also love that you and I share a TV cinematic universe together that we did not ever plan on, but that we are forever connected with the Punisher, Jessica Jones, to a large part of the audience have their own little Marvel universe.
Yeah, it's such a good little Marvel universe.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, if it had been a crappy one, that would have been embarrassing. But certainly, I think that both Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Punisher, those three were the best achievements of that.
Luke Cage too. Luke Cage is
yes, absolutely. Luke Cage certainly stands up there.
They're all good.
Yeah. Well, you can't lose with Mike Coulter.
So let's rewind a little bit about that. The Punisher, and I don't want to spend the whole time with the Punisher, but it is fascinating watching the character evolve through the decades and have different interpretations in cinema as well. Mm-hmm. And do you how do you feel about it? Are you just zen?
Well, when the first Punisher movie came out with Dolph Lundgren, I was actually so out of the comic book business at that point that I had not even been aware, that it was about to happen. And of course, this is before anybody at either. Both companies were trying a little bit to sort of give credit or some financial rewards to people, but there was no real consistency to it. So when I heard about this, I was actually heard about it in an embarrassing way. I was at the time single, and I was on a date with a agent from CAA, and I was a screenwriter, TV writer at that time. And so we're on this date, and you try to make a good impression with somebody, so you try to find something you can talk about, in common sense. And I asked her, so what's interesting going on at the agency right now? She said, oh, well, we got this project that we've been pitched for one of our actors. It was actually pitched for Christopher Lambert. And she said, yeah, and it's based on this comic book property. This character at Marvel Comics, he's a ex-Vietnam vet, who's gone on a mission and as she's telling it, I'm slowly being filled with rage because this is my character and I knew nothing about this and I'm not going to get a dime out of this. And I blow up in this explosion of, those sons of bitches, what are they doing? And she's slowly moving back. Needless to say, we didn't have a second date, but that was my first experience with dealing with having my characters transposed into film or television. And then I subsequently, there was a Thomas Jane version, which again, I wasn't really involved with, although they did ask me to come in and do some work on some commentary for the DVD release. And then finally we have the Netflix version. which I honestly feel is the best version, and I'm actually felt the most connected with, because the people involved did actually reach out to me. We did talk. My status with Marvel is in a good place, so there was some nice feedback on that end, and there was credit.
I love that there's so many versions of the Punisher that you skipped one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the one with oh gosh, what's his name?
Ray.
Yeah, which actually is probably the most authentic to the comic book in a lot of ways, but was kind of maligned, and I think unfortunately so, because the director did a terrific job, but small budget, low budget, not really trying very hard from the studio's point of view.
Well, you brought up a subject that is just deeply fascinating to me, and a lot of our fellow creators as well, is that you had a glorious career at Marvel and DC and all over comics, and then have this just out of nowhere tremendous second act as a very successful TV writer working on projects. And I will admit that I snuck and I watched your interview with John.
Okay.
So I do know a little bit about this, but I did want to talk more about your transition into this to being a TV writer, because I was a fan of yours, and then you would hear Jerry Conway's writing Law and Order, and
how did that happen?
Oh, good for him. No, you're like, oh, good for him, because I actually knew like a couple of directors who told me like that's the most money in the bank gig in television, that like they run 1 million times forever. The royalties are insane, right? So that's amazing, but it isn't the kind of material I think of when I think of you, right? I think of like, sci-fi opera and deep Spider-Man character. And then you're doing, whodunits, really.
Whodunits and procedurals,
you did, so people who don't know, you did Diagnosis Murder and Father Downing Mystery. So you were doing quite a lot of work on some really sturdy network dramas, which in itself is its own art form. It's a completely different art form from the one we do as our day job. So I want to talk about that, but I want to kind of come in with, I know that the first step towards this was you and Roy Thomas working on the movie Fire and Ice with Ralph Bakshi and Frank Frazetta. I would like to spend the rest of the hour talking about that. No, I am just deeply fascinated about how you transitioned from comics to film, because now a lot of people do it, but back then, and even in the earlier part of my career, there was a sense, much like there were TV actors and movie actors, and never will they meet. The writers had little silos they were stuck in, and that was it. So, how did Fire and Ice come about?
Well, Roy and I actually came together originally, because of our friendship and because of our mutual interest in getting into writing films, and we sold our first script based on the fact that the reader for a production company was a comic book fan, and she knew who we were. And so
that's my business model, by the way.
Yeah, yes, you've got to have a fan somewhere, and she promoted us to the producer, and the producer bought our script, which made us legit writers. And then at that point, the connections that Roy had built up with Ed Pressman on the first Conan film enabled us to, be considered for that film. But it wasn't until we wrote the Fire and Ice script for Bakshi that we were actually considered B-list, enough B-list writers to be brought in. It was kind of weird. I mean,
so you had to elevate to B-list to get.
Yes. Well, you talk about how you get stuck in silos. We actually had to almost hide our comic book writing background to be taken seriously as screenwriters. And so pretty much for most of the first third of our film writing career, that was like the second or third thing that people would find out about us. The first thing would be, oh, you worked with Ralph Bakshi. Oh, you worked with Ed Pressman and Dino De Laurentiis. Then, you know, and at one point, Roy and I were actually warm in Hollywood. We used to say we got, you know, not hot, but warm. And we were guys who were, yeah. If we weren't like the first, we were at least the second team that would be called in to write a big budget fantasy film. But as all things will, you know, this sort of fell apart eventually. My partnership with Roy fell apart before that happened. But in the process of working with Roy, I had met a guy named Dean Hargrove when we were doing a project for Showtime, and Dean had been brought in as an executive producer on it. And after Roy and I stopped writing together, I reached out to, you know, a whole bunch of people asking for advice. You know, what should I do? And Dean was the guy who actually responded with a job. He gave me a job writing for a show called God, I'm blanking on it. But it was this kind of knockoff of the two cops, one rogue cop, one tough cop. You know, that sort of deal.
Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, like that. But it was a 6-episode show, and I did a rewrite on a script, and then after that, he gave me a script, and then after that, he hired me. And in a weird sort of way, from that point on, I was pegged as the mystery writer guy, because Dean was, you know, the producer of Matlock and Jake and the Fat Man and Father Dowling mysteries and Perry Mason movies, and I wrote all of those, you know, and I became the guy that he turned to. You know, I was like his number 2 guy, which is basically was my role in Hollywood and TV, was the number 2 guy who was brought in to work on any show that he was doing. And then subsequently that became my rep, you know, that I was a really good procedural / mystery writer. And I could not get hired to do a single fantasy show.
Unbelievable.
I went in, I pitched for Lois and Clark, I pitched for Birds of Prey.
That kills me. Birds of Prey kills me.
Nothing. Yeah. I couldn't get into any of them, you know, because I was a mystery writer. I mean, the 90s were weird, man.
Yeah, no,
very weird.
It's just absolutely fascinating. And I grew up at a time where I must have read this early on in my career because I got obsessed with it. Like some of the writer says, as soon as someone attaches a label to your name, stop what you're doing. Just immediately pivot to another career because someone put you in a box and you got to get out of the box.
Early on in the 70s, back when National Lampoon had its offices downstairs from Marvel Comics, I used to, my way of making my way in the business was I would just show up at offices. You know, I was a teenager and I had no shame. I would just show up at offices. So I showed up.
I did the same thing.
Yeah. I showed up at the National Lampoon offices and became friendly with Henry Beard, who was kind of this sardonic. I mean, if you've seen the film version of the Lampoon origin story, you know, he's a lot like that, you know. So he was this kind of mordant, sardonic guy. And after a while, you know, I sold some stuff to the Lampoon, and I brought in a friend to see if he could get some work, you know, because I like to help people out. And this friend of mine was this very talented science fiction writer who had just placed a story with Playboy magazine. And Henry was like, you know, oh, you sold a story to Playboy. He says, yeah, I did. He says, I hope you like that story because that's the story you're going to be writing for them for the next 20 years. And of course he was right, because at that time, Playboy, you know, if you wrote a certain kind of story, that was a story that they bought from you. You couldn't break out of that mold. And so my friend was both happy and kind of distraught. You know, but
no, so someone says, like you get a label, you say thank you, and then you start hyperventilating.
Yes.
You're like,
Yeah.
oh no,
I mean,
I'm a crime
hopefully it's a
writer.
good label. Hopefully it's a good label. I mean, I was fortunate. I was able to move from dad mysteries or mom mysteries to procedural mysteries. There's a lot of people who worked on Dean's shows were marked as old-fashioned writers in the 2000 market.
Yeah. So how did you pivot to Law and Order? Because that whole you were on a few Law and Orders, right? You were on.
It was actually I ended up I wrote 3 or 4 Law and Orders, and then I was on Law and Order Criminal Intent for 5 years as a producer.
Superior show. We all know.
I love that show. I mean, and I had the opportunity to work with Vince.
That's amazing.
Vince D'Onofrio.
So we can now look at that show as like Kingpin, like origin story. Okay. Right.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Vince reached out to me. He was doing these little videos for food banks, where he was raising money, and he asked me to write one for him. And I said, "Can I do a Goran for you?" So we did a little Goran video that he did, where he was like doing the Aria interrogation scene, and made it into a little comedy bit. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was weird because I made that transition through, as most of my transitions in comics to film to anything, through a series of accidents and happy coincidences. I worked with somebody on a show that I was hired for because I was known as a mystery guy, and then he went and worked for Dean Dick Wolf on a project that wasn't going anywhere, and he suggested me to come in and do a rewrite on it. I came in and did a rewrite on it. It got picked up to a series. Then I met this guy who became the executive producer of that. And then when he went to Law and Order, he asked me to do some scripts for him. And it's you trace these things backwards because you can't trace them forward. You can't make a plan.
Well, and it's part of the reason I wanted to bring it up is I know a lot of people who watch these are people like us who are working on their creative careers on some level, and sometimes the alchemy of a career can seem madness and unobtainable when you're starting, when the road's in front of you and it's there's a wall of fog right in front of you, no matter where you are on the road. But as you get older, you realize that it's just keep working, just keep doing work you believe in, and doors open, not always the doors you think are going to open, and
I call it stirring the pot. You stir the pot. Even writing spec scripts. I never expect any of my spec scripts to sell, but there seems to be this psychic. I don't believe in ethereal phenomenon. But there does seem to be this karmic force that when I finish writing a spec script, when I'm like burned out and done, somebody offers me a job on something else. And I have but if I'm not writing a spec script, nothing is happening. I could be sitting there ready to work, nothing, but as long as I'm doing something, as long as I'm proceeding in some way to create and to put something out into the universe creatively, I get something back, and I don't know why that is. But
I'm very serious. I have come to fully embrace and believe in this unseeable creative energy that bounces back and forth. I have had a few instances in my life that are so undeniable and crazy that that I go, all right, there is something out there. When you put stuff out in the world, it comes back. It does, sometimes years later, sometimes decades later, but it's energy you put out in the world, and it has come back always to me in a phenomenal way, in a surprising way. There was an incident I'll talk about soon where a musician whose work I was obsessed with when I was working on something decades ago found that work without knowing that their DNA is all over it, and connected to it and sent me something. and it shocked me 20 years later.
Yeah.
Shocked me. So, I mean, and that has happened a couple of times. And as you get older, that's because now as you get older, you get to see all the seeds you planted and what's going to happen with them. But that kind of stuff happens. I know I sound like a Portland hippie talking about this kind of stuff, but it does, man. It just happened.
I think it's about productivity and your own personal openness to take. One thing which whenever anybody asks me what you should do, to advance your career, one thing I always say is you just have to keep working and creating, and as long as you're creating, that's the goal. What happens after you create it, you're not in charge of. My wife is a very talented film editor, director, and comedic writer. She does a web series. She's always worrying, will anybody see this? And she actually has like millions of views. It's a very successful web series, but she's always worried about, maybe nobody's going to get it. And I said, it doesn't really matter. What matters is you do it. You do it, you put it out there, and then you see. You've got nothing to say about how other people are going to react to it. And you certainly don't have anything to say about how the universe is going to reward you if there is a reward. The work itself is the goal.
The rewards aren't always immediate. Sometimes, I mean, we live in America particularly is a very weekend culture for everything: TV, movies, music. But we know that was stuff that we put out there that wasn't a big hit when it came out, and it ended up being the biggest hit ever. Financially for us over a time, whereas other things that were like the #1 book of the year and like nobody talks about it the next year. You know what I mean? So it's you never know. You just never do. So
Justice League Detroit, which was my great shame, which at the time was like it seemed like the death of my involvement with DC, and it really was. Then becomes my a financial pipeline in my 60s. So fine.
Well, okay, you said the magic word, so I'll bring it up. So the one bone I have to pick with you is Justice League 200, because you ruined me. Like there's books that aspire, and then there's books that just to the point where I just this one I've spent so much of my career attempting to recreate the magic of Justice League 200 or just aspire to it, including like last month in Legion of Superheroes, I had 44 artists drawing Legion of Superheroes attempting to accomplish what you guys did in Justice League 200. And I will say I have this deep, potent memory of obsessing over that book, and not only because of how it's structured and its beautiful homage to Justice League's DNA of how they told those stories, but you did something for me. You introduced me to a few artists. You also introduced me to I already knew that different artists had different voices, but seeing them laid out in almost a portfolio style like that it allowed you to really compare and contrast the line work of Brian Bowling versus Joe Kubert, right? And I'm at an age where I'm here's where I get Chris Farley on you, and I apologize, but I'm at an age where I'm literally unpacking the magic of comics and what they mean and what you can do with them. And there you kind of like laid out in front of me like a masterclass of how to do it, and I just can't thank you enough. And then, but the real thank you for me for that book is I remember very specifically that's where I was introduced to a few artists' work, but Brian Boland was the first time I had ever seen his work, and I literally ran to the comic store like the next day and found Judge Dredd, and like I figured out who he was, and here was Camelot 3000 and all that. And I remember that feeling. You introduced me to other people's work, and that work took me on a journey. And so my first year at Marvel, they let me do a book called Ultimate Marvel Team Up, where I could go sit and do, just hire and do whatever I want. And I very arrogantly called Bill Sienkiewicz, who I did not know, and said, "Hey, you want to draw Punisher and Daredevil with me?" And he said yes. And I'm working with one of my heroes. I meet like my first year in mainstream comics, and like I'm working with one of my heroes. And then I got like the book came out, and I'm like, people are going to be like, "Wow, Brian, you got to work with Bill Sienkiewicz." Like I'm like, and the first comments were, "Where did you find Bill Sienkiewicz? What a discovery! Wow, you invented like I invented him or something, right?" And then I immediately shot back to being in my room, discovering Brian Boland and the power that we have as creators to introduce others' work to people, right? Yeah. And then I felt it with Bill Sienkiewicz, and I immediately corrected and said, "No, this is a legend that I'm lucky to be working with." But every time I make these choices about who we're hiring, and I'm like, "Oh, I would love to show off this person to whoever's reading this book, because I know there's someone out there who's going to be blown away." Right. Yes. And so I think about those Brian Boland moments with you, and I make a lot of choices based on that feeling. I know that's very intricate. I'm sorry, but yeah. No. It's amazing how many times I've tried to do Justice League 200. I think it's like we're at like 9 times. This one, I will say this Legion project may have I'm finally over it. I finally may have done it, but in my heart. But we'll see. It kind of builds up steam again. It also gives you the opportunity to work with people you can't work with, right? Yes. So,
well, I mean, the big advantage I think that 200 had over, subsequent years is that some of the original artists who were associated with those characters were still alive and available. We were able to get Jim Aparo and Gil Kane in the same book. We were able to reach out and get Joe Kubert, and introduce somebody like Brian Boland, who hadn't been associated with, DC to that degree, at that point. Today, we're into the 4th and 5th generation of artists. So it's kind of hard to find the as iconic connections as we were able to get with those. I mean,
you also found the artist that matched the character. There was a historical precedent with each one.
And I think that was what made that book feel so special. Was it wasn't just a really good artist doing that. But we had Jim Aparo doing Phantom Stranger. I mean, which is like, how perfect can you get? And that was, I think that was a moment in time that would have been hard to replicate, Yeah,
I know it is. It's a very hard moment in time to replicate. I've tried.
And I know. I'm glad that I've given you a goal, though.
It did. And I must say, honestly, jokes aside, it allowed me opportunities to, touch some of my heroes and collaborate with people I would be scared to, or even peers whose voices are so outside of my world but it has opened many doors, is what I'm saying. By attempting to work with people outside my sphere, it has literally made it my goal to just stay out of my sphere. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Just to answer, if I can, we've been missing a lot of questions and comments. There is a National Lampoon documentary. There's a documentary, and there's also a dramatized comedy film based on the documentary on Netflix, directed by David Wayne and starring Joel McHale as Chevy Chase, which is kind of amazing. So it's called like Stoned.
It's a completely, what is a stupid and it was based on that line from Animal House.
Yeah.
A futile and stupid gesture.
Yeah.
A futile and stupid gesture. Yeah.
So I'm a huge comedy and comedy history nerd. It's an awesome doc and an awesome book as well. So if you want to know that.
It was kind of sad. I mean, I knew all of those guys for the most part. Not like I know my friends, but having met all of them, met Doug Kenny, I did a piece of work for Doug Kenny, Michelle Coquette, and Bay. I mean, they were right there. It was like right there. But then it was such a flash, just such a moment in time where everything seemed to be connecting between comics. I mean, Roy Thomas appeared in some of those. Roy and Jeannie Thomas appeared in
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, those nude underwear for the deaf.
Sure, yeah.
That's Jeannie Thomas.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there was this Roy and Doug Kenny and Jeannie in some of those fumettis. That's them. It was a very weird time.
Yeah. All right, let me hit a question. This is for both of us. Let's before you write a character, say Superman, how many books do you usually read in preparation? I plan on writing comics one day, so I thought I'd ask. Writers do research, and comics are no different than anything else. In fact, comics, the research is just a lot more fun. And by the way, if the research isn't fun, don't do the book, don't do the gig, no matter where you are in your career. If you're not enjoying all your reading and your planning, that your little brain is saying, this isn't for you. In fact, I think you can see, here's a lot of Supermans right behind me. So all of them get read. By the time I got to Superman, I was an adult who'd read a lot of Superman comics already. So I'd dove in and reread a lot of things and was surprised how much I had already read, just throughout life. But yeah, I treat everything like it's I came up through crime fiction and true crime, and it's a lot of research, and I just still treat it that way. That's what you
Brian,
do.
can I ask you, what was the era of Superman that you felt was most influential on you? I mean, when you approach the character now, what do you sort of
see? That's a tough one. It's gonna sound like I don't mean to sound I was in high school when John Byrne went to DC, and
Sure.
And that was a big effing deal
Sure.
for all of us. And that I started buying, like a lot of people, I started buying Superman comics because
Sure.
and my X-Men guy was doing Superman. So that's probably the time I spent the most time thinking about Superman. But then I went to a convention where Kurt Swan was there, and that stuff became more important to me. Like John, again, every creator does this, but John's work opened up to what I found to be more satisfying Superman just before him, and also John's run was all mired in the Crisis editorial stuff that you know very well. So there was always something weird about it, and I must say I re-looked at it all when I came to DC and thought about John's choices. I mean, I was even given a book called Man of Steel. Like, I really had to think about the pedigree of the name and everything. So I thought about some of the choices John made, and in retrospect, it felt like it was really the John Byrne show. Which we've all been guilty of at some point. And I thought, I definitely don't make this the Brian show. Make this the Superman show. Like as much as me coming to DC was being advertised, let's not make my voice the most important part of this thing, because that stuff doesn't always age as well as you'd want it to. So that's what I thought about the most when I was coming here. But also Superman and Legion have what I would consider to be like fits and bursts of genius. Like instead of long runs, there's like little pockets of
year here, year there,
Like I can tell you like I forgot Walt Simonson had done a Superman special that rattled me, right? And then when I went back to my reread, I'm like, Walt's there again, just getting me where I need to go. But also, I was of an age when Alan Moore did his goodbye to Superman, whatever happened to the world of tomorrow. So that was the most joyful Alan Moore story I had read, even though it was also the saddest. But it was, compared to his other stuff, it seemed much more hopeful, and it really got me. So
it was a sweet story, yeah,
very sweet and very well done, and also Kurt Swan right there doing what he doesn't get enough credit for, to be honest. So yeah. So you?
I think the Kurt Swan era was when I was growing up, but the Wayne Boring Superman was really my touchstone from the late 50s, and the early exploration, the early stories about Krypton, that the Wayne Boring era brought. There were all these novel length issues, where because at that time the average Superman issue had 3 stories in it, and when they would do a full issue, it was a novel length story. And I remember the early Laurie Lemaris stories, the stories set on Krypton, where Superman would use his memory thing to somehow remember things that happened to him as a baby. And that era just sort of stuck with me, when I came onto the book, because most of the 60s, from about 63 through the period when Denny finally was brought on the book, Denny O'Neil was brought on the book, that era sort of didn't really have much impact on me. I was mostly a Marvel fan during that era. So for me, the Wayne Boring early
I don't think Wayne gets enough credit for what a wonderful illustrator his line weight was like Steve Rude, amazing. Yeah. And you never hear him spoken of in that regard. And I he also did this one thing with Superman that nobody has done, which is the running through the sky, which I've always loved, the Superman running, with one leg up, and it just, that's an image that I really, really respond to. But that's, my childhood, so. Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, and just so I said for the record, also I was 10 years old when Superman the movie came out, and it rattled me to my core. And my son is 7 right now, and I'm watching him get just rattled by some of my friends' work and stuff he doesn't know. It's so wonderful. He literally we're stuck here all day, so he's just following me around the house, lecturing me about Groot, and it's just a reminder of my mindset back then. And I know that every time I'm writing Superman, it's just so part of the DNA, that feeling, the John Williams music is part of it. Someone keeps asking a question I definitely want to get to. Jerry, did you have a feeling Carol Danvers would be as big as she is now when you started?
Gosh, no. I mean, anything that we did back in the early 70s, we all thought we were riding a doomed ship. We all thought we were on the Titanic, because comics were clearly not going anywhere. The market was dying out from under us. And these characters were, these were efforts to try to keep the business alive. And I can't take any real credit for Captain Marvel or Ms. Marvel, beyond, I consider myself like a grandfather, in that case, and not even like a step grandfather, because all I did was take a character from that one person had created, gave her some powers, and then somebody else took it and made it into something really well. I mean, there's somebody else obviously being Kelly Sue. So, it's very cool, to be even slightly associated with that.
That's
amazing. All of that stuff, seriously, comic book creators today are kind of rock stars in a way. And back then we were just, guys who, my generation was the generation that decided they wanted to be comic book people, professionals. Before us, the comic book professionals were people who couldn't make it in other fields. That's what they saw themselves as, people like, even someone like Gil Kane, who was such a wonderful comic book artist, his goal was to be, have a newspaper strip, to be considered, a valued member of the Society of Illustrators. It wasn't to be the best comic book artist ever to work on, characters like Green Lantern. I mean, it's kind of weird now because we have this public persona, thanks to things like the MCU and the Arrowverse, and all the TV shows based on Image Comics, and we're all like, quote, famous people, or somewhat famous people. But back then, we were just guys who tried to make a living, and mostly guys.
It's hard. I agree with you that people know our names more than they would have. Like even when I first broke in, when I first had like a book that sold, like it feels very different now. But I think it's imperative to creators coming up, do not look for this. Do not chase fame. Do not look for rock star. All that rock star behavior is bullshit. It doesn't get your work done. It just is annoying. Don't do it. Just get your work done and let people think nice thoughts about you. Don't
try to be a star.
we have both watched this. We have both watched, I don't know how many you've seen, but I've seen dozens of people swagger into comics and swagger right the hell out because it's just not, it's not sustainable, and it's not what the job is. The job is get your work done, So, and if anything comes afterwards, fantastic, brilliant. But that's what happened, right? It's not something we were going for. But when you see the creators put on the sunglasses and head into San Diego,
it's not a good deal. I mean, I'm sure there are benefits, but my attitude is one of gratitude, and I'm always surprised when somebody wants me to do something. That's generally my posture in life,
Yeah, but there's every once in a while someone comes into comics and goes, "I'm here. You're welcome." And
you've got to be so good to make that work. That's not how it works.
It does not. So all the characters, and there's quite a few at both companies, and I saw you talking a little bit with John about, I was surprised you brought up Vixen as being a character that does you well financially in the ancillary. What would you say? What would you think would surprise fans about what we're in those worlds? Like what?
In terms of what money making
operation? When you see a royalty check from every once in a while, that you go,
My most successful character financially, for me personally, is Killer Croc.
See, that's exactly
because he's appeared in every Batman cartoon show. He's in every Batman. He was in Suicide Squad. He's in every video game. It's like he's money in the bank, and I have to thank Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for putting him into the animated show, which is really what propelled him forward. Because they needed a character that was kind of big and muscular and powerful and simple to design, which is what Killer Croc is. You can just do him he has an easy silhouette. But thanks to that, I got all these Killer Croc toys around my house. I've got all these movies and video games. It is money in the bank.
You completely blew up the comment section. I completely everyone loved that. So yeah, that's amazing. I knew it was something like that. I thought it might be Vixen. Yeah. That's pretty great. Let me hit some questions.
How about you? I mean, obviously Miles is probably
it's Miles, but in the same vein, I get really excited when his best friend Genki shows up in things, or his mother. Sure. I get really people don't know, we invest equal amount of love and energy into the supporting characters as you would the lead character, and sometimes even more. I'm forgetting to wrap it up. But Miles hit the not to be braggy because I didn't have anything to do with this part of it, but Miles during the movie hit the weird trifecta of three things I really wanted as a nerd, but didn't know I wanted, which was I got I got a look at this.
Oh, wow.
Right? I never in a million years thought I wanted a Campbell's soup can. I did. So it was the Nike shoes, it was Nike, the tennis shoes, the Campbell's soup, and I think Pez or something. Whatever it was like it felt like sometimes it's hard for people like us to know if we've succeeded. Like in the face of success. Yes, right. You're like, I don't, but like you go Campbell's soup can. That's it. There you go. All right. I'll leave that one sitting. Sadly, we have to wrap it up. I'm very sorry that we didn't get to more questions. People were asking some very good ones. Some of them are actually more appropriate for the conversation I'm going to have with Mike Oming on Sunday night. So if anybody wants to join us for a hang on Sunday, a chill hang with John Sutras and Mike Oming, we will be doing that for part of this. Do you have any more paneling you're doing for this convention this weekend?
No, this is pretty much it.
Anything you want to promote before they unplug us?
No, good. I mean, people should follow me on Twitter if they like listening to raging political opinions.
I love. No, you are. I will say a very solid follow. Excellent.
Thank you.
Not
fun.
Yeah, you don't go off the rails. You just right there. Jerry, so I've said it to you privately, but I'll say publicly, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for the characters you've created, but also for the energy that you've put into comics, because that's, as we get older, that's the stuff that I aspire to. Having a career you can look back at fondly like this is the goal. And just thank you for just always being the guy, man. It's just really amazing.
Thank you. You're too kind, Michael.
All right.
I'm just flattered. Take care and be good. And hopefully I'll see you in Portland next year.
Yeah, yes. Or if there's a Portland, we will be here and I will see you. And again, thank you to Baltimore Comic-Con, John Sutras and Mainframe Comic-Con for having us. This is really awesome. This is all right. And I do not know how we hang up. I don't know what happens now.
I don't know. They'll either turn us off or...
I don't know what to do. So...
Hello. Is this thing on? I'm live. Go ahead. Hey, folks. My name is Dean Haspiel, and I'm here to talk about comics being made in 1985 when I was 17 going on 18. Yeah, we're about to have a bunch of real hot dogs of the industry discuss comics with us. Actually, I wrote up something, so I'm just going to read this real quickly, and then we'll have a nice, lively conversation. In 1985, I was a senior at LaGuardia High School, 17 going on 18. My good buddy Larry O'Neill was assisting Howard Chaykin and alerted me that Bill Sienkiewicz, who was working down the hall, wanted an assistant too, which is how I eventually wound up helping out Bill, Howard, and Walter Simonson on their comics in 1985. Dennis Cowan was there too. I learned how to use a ruler, an artograph, craft tint, employ inset panels, and exploit the narrative real estate of the blank page. And I witnessed Bill use an old tea bag like it was paint. I got turned on to Jim Thompson, Katsuhiro Otomo, and Warren Zevon. 1985 was the year I lost my virginity, literally, and became a cartoonist professionally. So with that little introduction, I want to bring on these other guys. And I don't know. I can't see them. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, wait. There's Howard. I don't know if you heard me. There's Bill. Dennis nodding his head.
Oh.
And I know Walter's having an issue logging on, but
Fuck Walter. He's old.
Oh, okay. Already. Okay.
Already. I'm still getting off on the professionally and virginity stuff. That was in
1985. Well, I know you love to talk about that, Howard. For some reason,
I love the virginity dance. I can't help it. It's the best.
We might have to save that for later.
I may. I'm not wearing any pants, so I'm not sure I want to do it today.
Guys, so great to see you guys, man. This is kind of amazing. And we'll have to, I guess, when Walter gets in. Yeah, well, what I want you guys to do is to help bring us back in time, okay? And set a tone for what the comics industry was like in 1985, 35 years ago. The last time all five of us, once Walter hops back on, shared the same space. You were all navigating mainstream and independent comics while breaking new ground. And what I want to do is I want to discuss what you were doing back then and get a piece of your mind, you know, where you were coming from and what you were, where you've been going ever since. So with that in mind, anyone who cares and knows about comics knows your legacy, knows that you guys are, you know, masters and innovators of the form, the comics form. And I want you to briefly introduce yourselves and tell us what you were working on in 1985 and why. And if you don't remember, I think I can tell you. So we'll start with Dennis.
Oh no! Why are you gonna start with me? What was I in 1985? I was doing most of my stuff right in DC Comics at the time, and I think that was the time when I was working on titles that started with V. So I was either doing Vigilante,
right,
V, or literally V, and I got two issues of each. And the last issue of each killed both books. So that was yes,
that's right.
I'm just a book killer. Yeah.
Well, you were brought on. I think you were brought on to the end of the series for V, if I'm correct.
Right, I was, because they were going to kill the book. So
they're killing the book, and then and then you did a couple issues of Vigilante. And actually, I don't know if you know, but recently, is it James Gunn who's taking over Suicide Squad? Is doing Peacemaker, that's loosely based on, I think, an iteration that you drew.
What?
Yeah.
Get out of here. You draw
Absolutely.
I have a vague memory of Vigilante.
So you drew one issue of a 3-issue arc that featured Peacemaker.
Oh my God.
Where he was kind of going bananas and going a little nuts.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the iteration. So maybe you'll be getting a paycheck. I don't know.
I just remember thinking when I was drawing it, I remember thinking, I'm not drawing the Punisher, I'm drawing the Vigilante. Like, this is so messed up. I should be drawing the Punisher. Why am I drawing the Vigilante? Like, it just felt like it was like the redheaded stepchild of like that kind of character.
Yep. But, and also, if I'm correct, I remember you loosely basing Vigilante on Clint Eastwood, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that was cool.
My limited drawing knowledge and whatever. I was a big Clint Eastwood fan back then. So I'm like, you know, when I just make him Clint Eastwood, I mean, he's the Vigilante. Yep. He the Punisher. So.
Dirty Harry, right? I mean, absolutely.
He had a nice ski sweater.
Say what?
He had a really nice ski sweater.
So Howard, when I entered the studio, you'd already been working on Flag for a year or so, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So that was your main gig. So in 1985, that's what you're working on. But like, how did you arrive to that? Like, I don't remember your earlier work. I think I was introduced to you through Flag, but obviously you'd done a bunch of comics before that for I think DC.
First comics made me a financial offer that made it possible for me to get out for me to get out from under the debt that I'd accrued working for Byron Price. And because Price had put me in a financial hole that just fucked me forever. Friends don't let friends work for Byron Price. That was the gold we had. And first made me this offer. And I have no idea why they had confidence in me that it was worth their while. They also went to other talent for whom I have no respect, so that I'm sort of lumped in with that crowd. But you know, they did it, and I had spent a couple of years away from comics after a spirited disagreement with the editor-in-chief at Marvel, and we're best friends now. And I did the book, and it seemed, and it achieved. It was a success to stem, but not really of any real commercial consequence. It never really achieved a commercial land base.
Well, you were being paid a paycheck regardless of sales, right?
Yes,
is that the idea?
I did okay, and I also owned the material. So
and you own the material. That's right.
The material reverted back to me because of a clause in the contract, and that was a blessing. It really was. It hasn't paid off in any real way. But it demonstrated that I had value. That's really the real function of the flag book, was to put me on the map as a guy who would finally develop the cattle to go with the hat. And you know, I was an awful person and a big mouth, but I finally managed to create a body of work that justified my obnoxiousness, and that really was a life-saving experience. It really was.
And that was your first foray into creator-owned comics, basically, right? I mean, you've done Starbucks.
No, I mean, we you know, all of us had done material we'd owned for various places. I mean, Friedrich's book, and you know, and some stuff for heavy metal. You know, all of us, and you know, Epic was there. There was all sorts of things. I mean, there were a lot. I mean, the '80s was a real buzzy time. I mean, it really was. I mean, Dennis and Bill come along. I mean, these guys came from the blind side. I mean, I told this to Sienkiewicz. He's heard me say this, but I think Dennis as well. That what really happened was Dennis and Bill and Frank, to a certain extent, although John was our age, he was sort of in that crew as well, came along and bent superhero comics to their will, which none of my generation believed was possible. And that's really the key to what ultimately happened in the mid '80s. A new way of thinking about that sort of mainstream character comes along, you know.
And also editors, I think, trusted the talent.
And that's all Bill and Dennis and Frank. Because John is like it's like a great traditionalist coming in. Sienkiewicz comes in, he's doing all this incredibly fucked up shit. And reinventing the way a page looks. Frank is synergizing Ditko, Eisner, and Kane. And it's just no one, and it coincided with the fact of Stan losing interest in running the game and just basically being the presence as opposed to the creative presence. You look at what Electro Assassin, you look at Moon Knight, you look at what Dennis was doing, even on stuff like V, and then you look at then Milestone comes along. These guys bent the material to their will in a way that none of my generation could have considered doing.
Well, I mean, if we could talk to Bill for a second. I remember entering the studio, and at the time, my buddy Larry O'Neill, Denny O'Neill's son, was working for you, Howard, as an assistant. And then he told me that Bill down the hall was starting to look for an assistant, and I was like, I raised my hand and came running. And I was such a fan of. I remember reading Moon Knight, and then there was that issue, Hit It, and I think I've talked to Bill about this before, like where he literally pivots. Like there is a huge something just happened, something changed, you know. And I'd love to talk to Bill about that, but also get him into 1985. And it occurred to me, I didn't realize that Love and War, your Kingpin comic, was done in 1983 or 82, or came out in 83. Bill, I don't know if you can hear me.
He's moving slightly. Period.
83.
Yeah, that came out before you did Electro Assassin.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
What's that?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
But you're a little choppy.
Okay. All right. It's a little. It's a little choppy on my end. I don't know if it's the way you guys do it. I don't know if it's me or if it's just systemic. But anyway.
Well, we're okay.
Shoot.
Bill's always breaking something. Breaking comics.
That's
breaking
hilarious.
Zoom.
Okay.
He's such a handsome fellow, though, so it's kind of tough not to.
Can't help himself.
I know.
I love the fact that it's the young guys who are fucking up technologically. Yeah, baby.
That's
yeah.
right.
That's fun.
But Bill,
By the way, I mean relatively young. Let's face it.
yes, of course,
Yeah, right?
of course. But Bill, if you can hear us and you're less choppy, like you had already completed the Kingpin Love and War story where you literally cut out wallpaper and put it on the the drawing of the Kingpin. Like kind of insane. You just pulling from other sources constantly to play with the form, you know? All right, you moving around, you're getting a better signal?
Now he's sideways.
See? You're feeding right into Haskell's stuff.
It is like a Bill Sienkiewicz comic. Now it's a wall, but it means something.
That's right, it does, absolutely.
You couldn't draw a wall like that. So shut up.
I am so slap happy. This is the most entertainment I've had all day.
This is fucked up.
I think he's gonna try to hop back in or something. All right. And where's Walter? Damn it!
Did he ever show up?
No, he's not. He's trying to get in.
Centrist is saying he's talking to Walter.
Oh, he is. Okay. Well, all right. So
yes, Bill.
Let me. I'm trying to.
Oh man.
Tell Bill to try his iPhone instead of his Mac or iPad if he's on his iPad.
Can you hear me?
Try your phone.
Can you hear me?
Try your phone instead of your iPad.
What
Bill,
Dennis said.
Try your phone instead of your iPad.
I'm using my phone.
Uh-oh. We're in trouble now. Try your iPad instead of your phone.
Yeah, it's guys,
I'm
it's
using my phone.
when it's Safari, it doesn't work well with StreamYard. I'm Joe in the pro shop. I'm sorry that I got to tell you that. Sorry.
Maybe
That's why I always use my desktop, because I'm on Firefox on my desktop and Safari on my iPad.
Yeah. I'm just
Well,
using
Safari is fucked.
That's better.
All right.
All right,
Hey, listen,
well-
I'm gonna try logging in on my
Do it on your computer.
All right. I'm gonna try that. Let me. I'll be
Of
right
course,
back.
now you're perfect. Yeah,
Now you're doing fine. Now you're doing fine.
I'm gonna try logging in.
Okay.
All right. While you're doing that, let's while we have these two guys
Yeah.
here.
Now you.
that
Yeah.
can
But
talk.
now you're looking at my nose. I'm holding the damn phone because this set here is just a complete.
It's just a guilt pain effect.
But
That's all.
Are you combing your beard with a fork?
With my back
I'm
scratcher.
trying to touch Bill on his nose.
I've got a back scratcher here, so I'm using it.
I love it. So wait, Dennis, what did you hop onto? Because I know later on you worked on a like The Question, and then Milestone happened. But what was your transitional period after doing those? Like, you weren't on a regular book, you know?
I wasn't on a regular book. I was just being given just stuff to do. I'm trying to remember what happened. I must have gotten The Question after that, right?
And when did Bill start inking you?
I did all those before then, and being vigilante, that was like part of the DC, stuff. I think I may have done like the Batman's 50th anniversary comic.
Okay.
The 3-parter thing with Sam Hamm. I may have done that next.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was like 85, 86. And then I think I did The Question after that.
Well,
or
I mean,
around the same time.
So your studio, to let the folks know they're listening to this, Howard was in Upstart Studios with Walter, and previously, I believe, and Howard, it was Frank Miller, Jim Starlin.
The original group was me, Starlin, Simonson, and Myrick. Myrick decided to leave and didn't tell anybody, but said Jim Sherman could come in. The narcissism of white people. I didn't say it out loud, did I? And
No.
thank you very much. And then Starlin left and moved upstate, and Frank moved in. And that was the longest run. There were the four of us. Sherman was there, with mostly hanging out with Weiss. Simonson would show up. I was there at 7 a.m.
Yep.
And,
Oh my God.
He was.
Well, I had to start smoking my day early because I had a big ashtray to fill.
Oh boy.
And, so it was great. I loved that time in my life. I truly did.
And then down the hall was a different company that had like a back room where Dennis, Bill, and Michael Davis, I remember, were in the back room there. And did you guys ever name your studio, Dennis?
Yeah, we did. It wasn't. I'm sorry. It wasn't. Come in. Come in. Want to see Howard? Look.
Who's that? Who's that? Mom?
Howard. It's my wife.
I know, but I can't come on camera. I'm in a onesie.
She's in a onesie. Look, that's Dean Haskell, who I knew when he was 17. This is the 1985 panel.
Oh my
This is
God.
what we were doing in 1985. There goes Bill.
Who's frozen?
Bill's frozen, but he's smiling.
Hi, Bill.
And there goes handsome Howard Taken.
Hi, Howard.
Howard's only getting better looking, huh? As he gets old.
What's up?
No.
No, I just wanted to
Hey.
Hey, Bill?
No, he says
Hi, Bill.
But did you name the studio, Dennis?
Yeah, we did. Well, actually, our studio was not down the hall. I think it was right next door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was right next door.
It was a print. It was a print
It
shop.
was a print shop that owned this space that was right next door. Very nice guy who rented to us crazy people. It was me, Bill, and Michael. Bill was always the most serious among us. He was more like Howard, and like he would get there early and get to work, and actually work. I would kind of half-ass work. I don't know what Michael was doing, but
I remember what Michael was doing. He was working on an alien comic or a space comic, and I think it was like 8 pages for Epic, and I don't think he ever finished it. I don't know what it was.
I don't know if he ever did. I know that like my main goal for being at that studio was to go next door to Upstarts and bother Howard and Walter and Jim Sherman while he was there, and Frank when he was there. I was kind of around when all that stuff was going on, But when we were there was when Howard, Walter, Jim Sherman, and Frank were there.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask. Unless Bill can answer the 1980, what he was working on in 1985. Are you able to talk, Bill?
Bill, can you talk yet?
Can you guys hear me at all?
Intermittently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can. I am. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
I think I was working on. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm trying to log into the site on my laptop here.
Did you get an email connection thing?
I thought I was working on New Mutants, finishing up the run.
You were on New Mutants and then started working on Electra Assassin, because that's what I helped you on.
Yeah, he was finishing New Mutants and on to Electra Assassin. You're right.
And
Right. I finished up.
And if you want me to help, one of my questions I have is, because you were next to each other, you clearly were sharing ideas and influencing each other. At some point, Dennis, you had Bill inking you on a lot of projects, right? Howard, I think you turned Bill onto craft tint because he started using that in New Mutants. And I remember taking pages home and craft tinting some of the New Mutants pages.
Is that true?
I think so. I mean, Bill,
I got introduced to it by Roy Crane stuff,
right?
And Noel Sickles, and of course Woody.
Right.
But I didn't know if Bill picked up on that from me.
Well, when I got there, you were using it obviously on flag craft tint, which to explain to the viewers, that was like the gray tone that you could get on your artwork. It was a certain kind of paper that could develop with a liquid, and you would get two different versions of it, like one that was
do a tint or do a shade.
Right. And then when Bill started working on after the Bear story, and it was doing the Legion story, you decided to kind of depart and do something a little bit different because you're going to get a little more psychedelic, I believe, and kind of this fractured mind. And he started using craft tint on a lot of that artwork that I helped apply. And then at some point, Bill wasn't coming in as much because I think he lived in Connecticut or something.
Right.
And I was coming and hanging out with like Dennis and Michael, and then doing the same thing, hanging out down the hall with Howard and Walter and Jim Sherman.
Right.
And then I think Howard took pity on me and decided to get a second assistant. Oh, there's Bill.
It's Kevich.
Bill.
It's Bill Sinkowitz.
There he is.
Can you hear?
Bill.
Bill, say a couple of words. Let's
Am
hear
I
you.
coming in at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you have a green thing in front of you?
Please tell me this is. Hold on a second. Let me.
He's always got something. Look at that green thing.
Why is there a green thing on you? Is there a green thing? What is
Oh,
it?
can you hear me?
It's judging him.
Is it live or is it not?
I think he almost left the Matrix.
Wink.
I think there's a crack in the Matrix right there on Bill's screen.
Oh, amazing. So much more fun than I had any idea would be. I love seeing you guys so much.
I love to see. We got to get Walter in, man. Where's Walter? Oh.
Let's talk about him while he's not here. Fuck him.
Well, right. So what was it like working in that same environment? And also, Bill, we were just catching up with everybody's work in 1985. You were working on New Mutants. You started Electro Assassin. You'd already done Love and War. And you were literally trying everything. As I mentioned in my introduction, I don't know if you heard it, I watched you take a used tea bag and like start to ink a panel with it or do something.
It makes great beige tones and flesh tones. It actually really does.
It was incredible to watch. Yeah, because just watching you just experiment and just reach and pull something from the side and just do something on your page was incredible. Even recently, when we hung out in Baltimore a few years ago at the museum, the art museum, I believe, with the Locust Moon guys, just watching just play with ink and just it was like your art to me is intimidating to look at and figure out how you do it, but to watch you play it makes me want to play. You know, it's less intimidating. It's kind of a
really? Well, that's great. That's actually
an interesting
really great
paradox.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can do to explain that is that I make mistakes every, nanosecond, and then I'm trying to fix it. So it's fucking up, fix it, fuck it up, and so it's like a snowball. It's just whatever leaves the mark and seems to draw whatever I'm trying to translate. If it looks right, then I leave it alone. And then, of course, until I don't, and then it shits the bed, But
so in a weird way, there's a chaos factor to your art, whereas I feel like with Howard, there was such structure and such a skeleton and bones to his. Did you guys? How'd you influence each other in 1985? You walking into each other's rooms, and can you talk about that?
Well, Howard's work. I mean, I'd known Howard's work since I think he was doing Fafford and Mauser, and I was really. I think I pretty much went through a whole period where I was.
Walter.
Shut up. Jesus.
Yes, the Prince of Sunshine is with us.
I'm pretty cranky right now, pal. Don't fuck with me.
But we were talking shit about you. There must have been.
He's got that.
Read again if you want to go back to it.
No, stay.
Cranky. That's that. I've been effing with technology, kind of cranky.
That was exactly right.
Yep. I know that look.
We won't go into it.
You know,
Well, I'm
like,
threatening
just-
the hamster on the wheel right now. You know,
just to catch you up, Walter, we've been basically talking shit about Sienkiewicz because he couldn't get on worth a shit. Now he's on, and now you're here. So it's like,
right.
the
So,
band is
we
back
planned
together.
this, Walter. We planned it this way, didn't we?
That's right.
You know?
We're getting the band back together. I'm sure it's said already.
Yeah.
This has not occurred since in 35 years. You know, this is the first time that we are in a shared space like this.
That's about
it's
right.
pretty
It's like
insane.
it's like
pretty
the,
insane.
it's like you know, yeah. Anyway,
So Walter, just to catch you up, we were talking about 1985 and all the work that everyone was doing in 85, and Bill was just catching
like
us
I
up.
said, in terms of the influence, I mentioned being familiar with certainly with Walter's work, but with Howard at DC, the work he was doing on Ford and the Gray Mauser, I just remember never having seen anything like it. And then when there was a certain design.
Oh, come on.
You know,
I was going to ask him.
Technology wins again.
I'm sure Bill will be back. I'm sure Bill will be back.
But he'll be back not knowing we haven't heard him. We'll just continue speaking.
That's right.
Oh,
there he is.
You're back. No, you're back.
I'm putting a gun to my own head.
And we only have 25 minutes left before they kick us off.
Uh-oh.
So,
well, I'll fix it right after that.
okay. That's right.
You know how it goes. It's like finding
That's
the
right.
reference you need after you're done turning in the panel.
That's right.
You know.
Here's my best story about that. I did Metal Men. I had to draw Stonehenge. This is like, what, 75? No internet, no web. I didn't have a lot of books back then. Trying to find Stonehenge pictures. I had a dictionary, had a picture of Stonehenge. It was like that big. But it was big, less than an inch high. But it was clear. I was worked out fine. 2 weeks later, I'm in the Strand bookstore. I find a whole shelf of Time Life books of the Neolithic age, early man, Neolithic, Paleo, all that stuff. And one of them is about Britain, Stone Age in Britain. And I open it up, and in some of these things, I have a chapter, and then a short chapter, and then a photo essay, a short chapter, a photo essay. The last photo essay in the book is Stonehenge. Stonehenge in the rain. Stonehenge in the dawn. Stonehenge in fog. Stonehenge from below. Stonehenge above. Stonehenge in every. And I said, all right. So I bought the book. I've never had to draw Stonehenge again.
Oh.
My God, if I do, I am all set.
That's amazing. That was one of the things we had to do for Howard was to clip out reference and put in a file cabinet. Now you have the internet. You know?
I would have a lot fewer books if I had started my career now.
Yep.
Well, I know that being in Westport, the Westport Library had Robert Fawcett, Albert Dorn, a slew of illustrators are like clip files in their private. They had a separate room set up.
That's cool.
For illustrators. Some of the illustrators, like Mark English, he would call in what he needed, and the librarians would pick out the reference. He'd pull up in his car. The librarians would hand him the envelope, and he'd drive off. You know.
Nice.
Well, where was that when I needed this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let me, if I could, I'd like to go back to the one of the earlier questions, because I'd like to make some kind of fucking contribution here instead of just.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Go, Bill.
Howard's work that he did with Byron, the
Stars My Destiny.
The flowers, the flowers about heaven and shadow, whatever. I forget what it was. There were a number of different ones that he did, and I remember thinking, I mean, it was a real huge influence on me. So it showed that that painted stuff was possible. Although my goal was to try to get subvert the comics themselves, because as opposed to a graphic novel like what Howard was doing with Byron, or with even with Marvel, with Love and War, I was trying to get into the actual comics and even take the superhero stuff and try to bring an illustrative quality to it.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about bending the material to your will as opposed to being bent by it. You know.
Yep. But how did you know to have the balls to do that? Like, honestly, like unless there was a free for all, maybe in the 1980s, editors gave you a lot more latitude than they do today.
There was a subversive aspect to the editors. If I had tried to come into comics with the style I developed that I sort of pushed towards the New Mutants, I wouldn't have been hired. I actually had to Neil Adams Trojan horse my way in. And then it was like, I felt like, some kind of weird Edward Snowden meets Hunter Thompson.
Right.
Once I was in there, it was like, oh, I have the keys to the executive washroom. Let me go in there and just play. Because and I don't know if anybody else has felt this way when they come to some kind of crossroads, but I had certainly with myself with the clone thing. I was in love with comics and also art, but comics were my thing. And I felt like I was either going to do all the kind of comics I wanted to do, or I was going to get out. I mean, Howard mentioned earlier that he had gotten out of the medium and came back to sort of establish, his own real voice. I mean, like, I think like with Flag, I think you really like made it like not only your own, but with a vengeance. I felt like you kind of came back and really grabbed. I know Walt was doing that on Thor, and I think Dennis was you were pushing it to the question at that time, right?
Well, that was a little bit after he got into the.
That was before the question, but what I can say is that there's 3 guys on the panel who totally influenced everything I did after. So between Howard and Walter and Bill, it's like kind of formed my life, my life in a way, in a very profound way. I'm looking at that and I'm freaking out a little bit. Howard was the one. Howard and Walter both taught me like hard lessons. At one time each or twice each, they sat me down and literally taught me what to do and what not to do and what to look for, what not to look for. I didn't need a lot of lessons, but the ones I got, well, I probably did need a lot, but the ones I got, they were generous enough to give me, meant so much. Howard sat me down after me struggling with V and Vigilante, as good as they were because I was doing stuff. I don't know how they felt about my work, but I know that they would look at it and really criticize it. And not in a mean way, but in a great way. So Howard looked at it and said, basically, looked at my page, took out a piece of trace paper and said, you're doing it all wrong. And I'm like, well, what do you mean I'm doing it all wrong? And he explained to me that comics were about shapes and patterns. And until I started thinking that way, I wasn't going to ever really successfully compose a page. So he taught me what that was, with circles and squares, and literally putting shapes on top of shapes and how that worked, what to look for. What was Alex Toth doing? What were these people doing that I'm not doing that I should be thinking about? Stop thinking about figures. Stop thinking about muscles. Start thinking about space. Start thinking about structure. And Walter did the same thing. He sat down and literally, we joke about this a lot, but I was so proud of one story that I had. It was a Power Man Iron Fist story. I was so proud. And it was like, it took place on a roller coaster. And the first page was like this giant roller coaster that I drew. And it was like 22 pages of stuff. I killed myself on it. And I remember seeing Walter, and he was Walt to me because like I was a big deal, So I went up to Walt and said, hey, Walt, take a look at this. Tell me what you think. It was so stupid. So Walt actually told me what he thought. It was like, oh, you want to know what I think? Yeah, I want to know what you think. So right in the halls of Marvel, he broke down every panel that was wrong on every page.
Oh,
as looking through it in the halls of Marvel. And I'm thinking, I'm dying here. Because I have to turn this thing in. And it's all wrong. I remember saying to Walt, I have to turn this in. And he was like, well, you'll get it right the next time. I mean, you can turn this is all right to turn it right now. But and I'm thinking, no, I'm turning the worst piece of shit ever because I have to. And literally, the pages are still smoking from the criticism. And I'm handing them to Demi O'Neill, stinking like they are. Reeking. And I'm thinking, this is the worst. And Denny's waving the fumes away. And like, and I just remember it going. I just remember thinking.
Here's the sequel to that story.
No
Years
sequel.
later, when we were in Upstart, you guys are next door. You were doing a Batman story. You had a Batman story. I don't know if it was a Sam Hamm script. I can't remember.
Sam stuff.
Something pretty cool. And you brought the pages over to me to look at. And they were dynamite. They were dynamite pages.
I don't remember any of that.
And that's what I said. I said, these are fabulous. These are fantastic. And you said, you reminded me of looking at the roller coaster job a million years earlier.
Yeah.
And said, that was the kind of reaction I expected back when I showed you the roller coaster job.
Yes, I told you. When I handed it to him, I was like, I was feeling myself. Because, this is really professional work. Man. So anyway, and then Bill, I'm working next to Bill, and he's, and people don't know, but Bill and I have been friends for a very long time. I saw Bill one of the first times he came up to DC Comics, showing his portfolio. I was there when he walked in his jacket and his slacks, right? And his portfolio looking very Westport professional. That's right, baby.
No, that was my little Abner look from New Jersey.
I was sitting in the lobby. I watched this guy walk in his slacks and a sport coat, and it's a young guy, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is wrong with him? Why does he look like that? And it was.
I was wearing pants, and nothing I was wearing was natural fiber. Everything was polyester.
Oh yeah.
And I was wearing a brown suit. I had pants you could play checkers on. Yep. I swear to God.
Yes.
And I had an Eiffel Tower tie.
He was awesome.
Because I remember Alan Weiss going, "Nice tie."
We're all like looking like, okay, so you're the guy. So the other time I met Bill, and this may have been after or before I saw him at DC. I'm up at Continuity because I was working Continuity. I'm 16 or 17. This is how far back we go. And I was working as an assistant for Neil. I was basically doing what Dean was doing, except less, because I didn't have as much talent as Dean. So mostly I got yelled at by Neil for messing things up. So it was great. So I'm sitting right behind him, and Bill walks in. And I guess he had an appointment with Neil to show his portfolio or something. Never forget this. Joe Barney was there. Joe Desposito was there. Mike Nasser was there. And Joe Bro, all those guys. And he comes in and he meets with Bill and he meets with Neil, and Neil opens Bill's portfolio and puts it on a flatbed surface. I'll never forget this. And he's flipping the pages slowly like this. Neil, he's great. Be right. Flipping them. And we're all looking like, God. And he's like, in case Neil would nod, yeah, see, this one's good. This one's good. And then he gathered us all. He says, come here, look at this. Hey, Dennis, come on, look at this. He goes, you see? And he looks at Bill and he looks at the page and says, this guy's doing me, but he's doing it right. By this time, Mike Nasser was there too. We were all gathered around because Neil had called us all in to look at Bill's portfolio. He's doing me, but he's doing it right. And he looked at kind of Nasser pointedly, and he looked at me, and he looked at everybody. And I remember thinking, just fuck this dude. Like, it was like I was thinking he's so great. I was thinking, what the fuck he's coming up here for? Now Neil's like, this is my new son. I've been working with him. Mike Nasser's assed out. Mike Nasser was really assed out, like, just fuck all this. And I'm like, I remember thinking, this polyester suit just came up here and just blew us all away. And I remember Neil Adams picking up the phone. I remember him picking up the phone while Bill was there and calling Jim Shooter and saying, I'm going to send this guy to see you. His name is Sienkiewicz. That's how you say it? Bill Sienkiewicz. I'm going to send him right now. Yeah, he's coming down. You're going down right now. He's coming down right now. I was there, baby. I remember all that. And I remember also thinking, Neil ain't never called up nobody for me to send me nowhere except to go get him something, like go pick this up at the store. That's the only thing he ever had me do. He ain't never sent me nowhere.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh God. But it was, you made a splash that day that I never forgot. Because
it was a pretty
in front of everybody.
time.
And then you would go on to be your regular inker. But I do want Walter briefly to tell us what you were working on in 1985.
Thor.
Is that when you'd been working on Thor for a little while? Was that when you introduced the frog?
That'd be about right. I was a couple of years in. I started in '83. So what's that? 24 issues. That's probably about the time the frog story showed up. And it was really, you mentioned earlier we were talking about something went by about editorial and freedom and whatever. And I was just going to say about that is that it seemed to me at that time, up until about 1990, and I've said this before, creativity in comics to me was more or less bottom up. You got a book, you could do what you wanted with it. Now, I mean within the limits of mainstream comics, because I was working at Marvel and DC mostly. But you really had that book, and you were on your own. After that, once crossover started coming in, creativity began being top down, and as a result, I think less interesting to me anyway, as a guy writing stories. But at that time, when I did the frog story, nobody said boo. I mean, I presented it to Ralph, who was my editor at the time, Ralph Macchio. I don't think I heard from Jim Shooter on it, really. It came out. The only time I talked to Shooter, I was going to do, right when I was getting off the book, I did an all splash page issue where Thor fights the Midgard serpent. And I was trying to figure out some way to do that story because Thor was going to be so small and the serpent was so big. And eventually I decided that all splash pages would do it. But I wasn't sure that was going to be received. At that point, John Byrne had done an all splash page issue of the Hulk, but it hadn't been printed. He'd gotten a contretemps with Denny about that, and I think he got off the book. And that story had not come out yet. Eventually, Alan Milgram published it in, what was that, Marvel?
Fanfare?
It was in Fanfare. But it hadn't come out yet. I hadn't seen it, but I knew it existed. And I had the idea to do an all splash page issue. I wasn't sure if Jim would be amenable to that at the time. By that time, he was kind of exercising more oversight on the books than he had earlier. And so I stopped by his office. I just I poked my head in. You're in the office a lot back in those days. Poked my head in. He wasn't busy. He wasn't talking to anybody right then. And I told him what I had in mind with my usual enthusiasm and gusto. And he just said, sounds great. And that was, it was kind of an inoculation against having any problem later on down the road. But it worked out fine, and the issue came out well. So my run on Thor, that was a book when I first took it over. Mark Grunwald was the editor. And Mark told me I had carte blanche to do whatever I wanted with it. It wasn't selling very well, which meant that, the good part about that was if I'd taken over the book and it tanked, they'd just say, oh, well, that book was going down the tubes anyway. Too bad. If it did well, they'd say, wow, Simonson, what a genius. Exactly. I'm not sure I quite made the genius level, but I did end up, it sold well, and that was that. But I really did. I've never had a book in mainstream since then, or before that, really, where I had carte blanche. I mean,
what about Orion? What about
Hunter and Archie? But Archie was the editor, so.
What about Orion? I thought that was such a great.
More or less. I mean, I did have to do a Joker crossover in the middle of it,
right?
Because they were doing crossovers, and it was like, okay, this month you're doing a Joker crossover.
Okay.
And I came up with a story I really liked, so I did 2 issues on it.
Right.
Said, screw it, I'll just do 2 issues on this. And I used a lot of Kirby stuff, but I had a lot of freedom on that. But that was also, nobody cared about Orion at DC. I mean, it was, DC. The new gods have never done very well there, the fourth world stuff. Yeah. And so, I got 2 years out of it, had a great time, one of my favorite books to do. I have a feeling that the second year I was doing it, it was probably losing money for DC, but they let me keep doing it. And then finally, how did this work? My publisher, my editor, and somebody else, I was a group editor. I don't remember how DC was structured, but Paul Levitz and Mike Carlin and somebody else, he went over to DC and Marvel eventually. They took me out to lunch to tell me they were canceling the book. And I have to say, it was very nice to have, as opposed to finding a message on your answering machine or maybe a email. Your book's dead. Go away.
Right.
It was very kind of them to do that. And so, and they gave me about 4 issues to wrap it all up.
Right.
I think Paul kind of blanched. I said, I'd need probably 4 more to get everything finished. And he kind of went, ugh. But then they let me have them, and it worked out pretty well.
Right.
It's interesting that you say that. I was just thinking about what everybody was doing in 1985 as compared to now, where, you know, like what you mentioned about top down, bottom up. I mean, I don't necessarily feel that the editors are really necessarily editors anymore. They feel like they're more glorified traffic managers to kind of keep the, you know, the wheels on the train of the licensing, you know, so to speak. Because there was a lot, 85, 84, 85, 86. I mean, that was such an amazing time. I mean, everything. I mean, I remember when you did Beta Ray, Bill, and then the Frog. It's like, it like just that kind of sent ripples through Marvel. I still remember, you know, people's response, and then with Flag, you know, that because that got on everybody's radar, and I, you know, I know obviously with, you know, with what Frank we did with Dark Knight and everything.
It was Flag, Thor, and Daredevil. That's what.
Oh, was it Daredevil? That's right.
It was Daredevil at the time. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, you're right.
One of the things we really have to remember.
While I'm working. Sorry, Howard.
Oh, sure. Finish that. Go ahead.
No, I was saying I was just working in comics, but I remember being influenced by that stuff while I was working in comics. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I totally agree. Yeah.
One of the things that has to be confirmed,
everybody,
is that we were all living in the same place. We saw each other all the time,
every day.
It was the last time that was the case, because Federal Express began to change the way, you know, well before the internet. People were no longer required to live in the city, and we were very much a real community. You know, everybody knew everybody. Everybody has stories. Everybody had experiences. We ate together. We drank together. We partied together.
We messed up.
It was distinctly community
together.
Say what?
I said we messed up together. We got mad at each other together.
Up, really, you know,
we did. All of it. It was an affordable life. You know.
I mean, part of it also, one of the things I really miss about those days is that it was great to go to the office. You had to take your pages in because you weren't scanning stuff yet.
Right.
You took your pages in, which means you bumped into Dennis or Howard or Bill or 85 other guys, and they all had work with them. And you could see the original art these guys were doing. The one instance that blew me away was when I was first in comics. I came into the DC coffee room. Bernie was there, and Bernie's one of the guys. Bernie Howard, Mike Kaluta, and probably Dan Green were the first 4 guys I met on the first day I walked into DC.
I think Weiss was there too.
Looking for work. Might have been
Bernie Wrightson, yeah.
Might have been
Weiss was there as well.
What's that?
Weiss was there as well.
Okay, maybe it was Alan then. And but shortly thereafter, you'd go into the coffee room, you talk to your contemporaries, you see work, and Bernie was doing Swamp Thing, and he pulled out Swamp Thing 4, I think it was, and there's an interior splash of a werewolf in there with a guy's head down, but really the guy'd be standing in the basement because it was way low for the perspective. But it worked. It was Bernie. It worked great. And there was this great full figure of a werewolf with his back legs and that kind of Z shape, a lot of zipatone on it. And it looked fantastic. And it was really, I think Howard said elsewhere that, Bernie really set the bar pretty much for the rest of us. And it was just, you'd look at it and you go, oh, crap. Now I got to go home and work harder. So we never caught him. But it was just amazing to be able to walk into the office and see that kind of stuff. And it was very encouraging. It was intimidating. And it really made you want to go back to your studio and work harder.
Would you say that
when we're talking here, Frank was doing Daredevil, Howard was doing American Flag, and I was doing Thor all at the same time at Upstart in that one room, which was pretty cool.
And Bill was on New Mutants and doing Electro Assassin. I mean, again, the proximity, I think, is what we're talking about, created a certain kind of healthy competition, I would almost say, that made you guys work harder and stronger. Would you say?
I certainly was the case for me. I mean, I remember when, Howard and I think we've mellowed a bit. I mean, I think during, I have nothing but love and respect for the man. But I remember there were some in our younger days. There was a lot of contentious sort of back and forth.
For each other's throats, baby.
What's
Because
that?
we were assholes.
We went for each other's throats.
Yeah, we did, and it was, and the thing is that I mean, we lived and breathed it, and it was like, it was passion, It was,
it wasn't competition for me. It was resentment. I'm serious. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
I mean, I felt that. I mean, like Walter said, Wrightson set this bar that was none of us were able to attend. You couldn't compete with that. And there were guys that, I mean, like Bill and I did a thing last year, or sometime in the dim past before the shit hit the fan, at Cal Arts, called Vulgar Shenanigans.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And we just had a gas. It was fantastic.
Yeah. It's really amazing when you kind of get a little bit more maturity under the belt, and you kind of realize it's like a lot of the stuff that seemed important so much longer, so much a while ago is kind of like literally water under the bridge. But
but there are still people I would rather see dead. So just be aware.
No. I think we can all name at least one or two. But yeah, that is true. I mean, we were all we would see each other. Now it's like, even with social media and people posting stuff all the time, it's sort of the public, square in a way, but it's not quite the same as holding the stuff in your hands and
walking
seeing
down
it.
Third Avenue wearing a Velcro snap red Superman cape with Frank Miller walking 3 feet behind me, so no one would know that he was with me. You can't get that on social media, man.
Also, I remember my first year or two. The first year, I think, when DC was still over at 909 Third Avenue, 909 Lexington, wherever it was,
from the Blarney Rose.
And I remember that, and there was also there were still Wienerwalds back in the city back in those days, which was a restaurant, chicken and German food, maybe, I don't remember. But we used to go there every so often, so that you not only got to look at the pages people were doing and could be excited about them, but you'd bump into your friends. Continuity was like a boys' club. For
Just thinking about continuity, because from DC you walk over to Continuity.
Yep, and Marvel the same way. You could walk to Continuity, and so then you'd go out at night. Neil taught me the beauties of a bacon cheeseburger, which I never eat anymore. There used to be a restaurant called the Channel 4 Restaurant down 48th Street, but it was really the communal aspect of it. It was partly professional. It was partly family, and that was it was. We often talk about that, not often, but occasionally talk about the fact we feel we came through comics at an absolutely fabulous time to be in comics.
Yeah,
which will not be replicated.
Going to lunch at Kenby's with Jack Abel when what's her name from the Facts of Life would come in and work the room. Jack calling the waitress George Washington. Just brutal. It was just brutal. Harry and Ralph, Paul Kirshner, all these guys, we were all of the same age. We were incredibly vital, to a certain extent, hostile, and it was the equivalent of what stand-up comics go through, trying to literally one-up. And
I think it's with stand-up comedy, it's they shit talk each other brutally. And that's a sign of affection,
Absolutely.
It's like you're kind of in the family.
Speaking of, I knew that I was, grandfathered in or well liked or loved because of a prank that was pulled on me. I don't know if Howard wants to tell the story or Walter wants to tell the story.
Well, I'm not sure. I think you should tell the story.
Oh no. I can tell a part.
And I want to say here and now, before this is told, I really held my own against Walter doing this.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Walter, do you remember that?
I cringed through it all because I
remember, like, I had never seen
so much.
I had never seen Walter get angry. I thought he was like the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood of comics.
You're gonna ask Howard about that later.
He was the nicest guy ever, and I remember, like,
I see what used to be filing cabinets, babe.
You saw filing cabinets, right? And they had a record player, and they would play like Warren Zevon and Van Morrison, right? and other stuff. And I guess I brought in a Prince record. It was a 45 of Little Red Corvette. And once in a while, they'd be like, Dean, you could put your song on, So I was like, thank you. It's really sweet. And then there was one day where, like, I don't know if it was Walter or Howard, just kept suggesting I put that song on again. Just go ahead, you should play it. And I was like, why? Like, you guys don't like Prince or whatever. You're always making fun of me. And then I decided, okay, I put on the 45. It's playing Little Red Corvette. I go back. I'm working on backgrounds on Flag. And I start to